Hello, everyone, and welcome to Rocket Lasso Live, Season 1, Episode 4. How's it going? This is the first post-NAB stream. NAB was really fun. Of course, there wasn't a proper Rocket Lasso Live, but that's fine because we're back now, and there's going to be a bunch of cool videos on those dynamics later. So we're going to be covering a bunch of stuff today. Hopefully got lots of questions popping in the stream. We've already got people hanging out. We already were chatting a little bit. So let's go ahead and share my screen here real quick and just mention real quick, if you're watching this video, that these live streams and all the tutorials are going to be supported via Patreon. That stuff is all free for everyone. So go ahead and jump on there and you'll get some special perks. I'm not going to go into everything, but you'll get your name and you get access. The big one is if you get access to all the scene files I'm going to be making today if you're at the engineer level. So you get all those scene files. That's really cool. And then what else do we got? Well, I got my, I guess I'll mention this just for the recording, that I got my awesome new rubber duck from NAB. He's my favorite. I got my cowboy duck here. He's going to be our little mascot sitting on top of my monitor right there. That's good. And then let's go ahead over here. And I just want to mention I have been, something I've been prepping a little bit is, and I have, if you're not familiar with Aaron Calvret, he's been doing a lot of really cool stuff. You've definitely seen his work because he made that absolutely gorgeous, like photorealistic, like a old timey painting where it felt like a painting, but it was all a 3D scene. And I got to meet him, and he's really cool. And because of him, I started tinkering around with some 3D scanning at home, trying to figure out some stuff. So I was able. This is just my quick test, but you can see I've got a really nice mesh here. And I got this all photo scanned, and it is just looking kind of cool. So the idea is I want to kind of build up my own little personal library, not go too crazy, but my own little personal library of some objects. So when I start the dynamics series, that I won't just be using spheres and cubes. I can actually be using some fun stuff. But I don't really like using sourced things from online because then I can't give those out for free to everybody. So that's one of the ideas there. But I'm really excited to be exploring that. Even tinkering around with some other pieces of software to be able to make that happen. So there's a bunch of Cinema 4D, but there's also some 3D coat and some mesh room, all recommended by Aaron, of course. But in any case, let's go ahead and jump into the chat here. And I'm going to click on it over here. And we've already got a bunch of links popping up in here. Let's see what we got. I like, if you don't know, make sure you give me a shout out on the artist name. We need that. Give me a shout out on the time or the specific effect you want. And of course, I jump around randomly in the chat, clicking different links. So if I happen to skip past yours, feel free to repost it. Just don't spam it. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my screen over. Boom. So I don't forget. And let's go ahead and put this over here so we can see it. And I'm going to click on lasered link, although this is a little scary. A small thing to dissect. So let's see what we get here. So what do we got? First of all, this is from Pop and Sickle.
And here you can see
Popsicle. Pop and Sickle. That's a cool name. So let's see what we got.
Alright, and here I have a MoGraph sim. And
oh, that's neat.
you see
so it's kind of like let's see, is this infinite and does it travel up randomly?
Randomized with some random
up. Does it travel up and then?
And let's see
neat.
how I built
okay,
this.
there's actually some pretty cool technical aspects to this.
Let's go and add
so yeah, let's definitely try and spend a few minutes seeing if we can figure something out here. Oh, I'm so sorry if that video was playing over. It started playing automatically on the screen. So hopefully that wasn't too distracting if there's double audio there for a second. Anyway, let's do that again. Anyway, let's click this link. What do we got? We got an animation here from Pop and Sickle. And what's cool about this is it's kind of showing this little N. I'm assuming it's some sort of logo. But what's cool is that they move away and they eventually return to that same position. In fact, it was blue, and then it's red, and then it's blue. Okay, so the important thing to see here is it going to loop? So it goes up, and then it goes up some more, and then it's only ever going up. So it's constantly moving. So it's kind of this. It's a blue version of the logo, and it is a. It's blue again. So but it is constantly moving upward. So it's the same thing again and again and again, but they're randomly offset and moving and eventually getting to the final location. That is the tricky part. That is the fun part here. So that is what we're going to be looking into. So let's jump on into Cinema 4D R20. Make sure I got the right screen up here. Make sure I've got the chat in the other window so I can see it pop up in case there's any problems. Make sure I'm on the new messages. Okay, so now that we got that going, how do we do this? Well, let's try and actually figure out the mechanical part of this before we do anything else. So we can do some super low poly stuff to begin with. Why don't I just make a plane? I'm going to face this on, let's say, Z+, make the polygons 1 by 1. You can make it nice and skinny. Now, presumably, the final shape, we'd have to have that initial state of the final shape. We can go ahead and do that. We can go ahead and do that at any point, getting the shape. But as far as getting the motion, that is the challenging part here. So what I'm thinking is we need to just start out by making a bunch of clones of this. Do we even make a grid of them? Maybe. Let's start out by making a grid. We'll just do a height of 1 and depth of 0. It's a weird thing I've been getting with Cinema, where when I click, sometimes I get this flash of black on the screen. It's a little weird, but we're going to ignore that for now because I think it actually goes away after a little bit. Yeah, I'd like to figure that out, though. So we'll get a couple of clones going across here. And the basic idea is that these are going to offset, but then have to travel around to the beginning again. And that is the interesting part. Now, there might be a lot of different ways of doing this. First of all, let me think. Let me think, because the technical front end of this is the fun part, and that's what we have to get right. Because I mean, it would be easy to take this and offset it, all of them in the same direction. But if we're going to offset them randomly and then reform the object again, that's the crazy part. Now, we could randomly offset it upward and travel around a bunch, but that didn't seem to move that much. So then that makes me think that we get multiple levels here. So if we had like 2 layers like that, that if we randomly offset one traveling upward, that it then, that same effect eventually behaves again in a different location. Or, let me think, actually. Like, that was deceptively simple, and I don't think it is that simple. Or, I don't know, maybe there's a good technique. Because one thought that popped in my head was that you could do like a loop. Like we could have like a ring here, and so it could travel around and then come back to the start position. That's a very useful thing to do. And yeah, so my thought is, and as the chat is saying, is that I would think that you'd make the pattern and then make a cool little pattern like above it and below it, and eventually just take that same pattern and put it on top of itself, and you could offset the entire thing. And that's all well and good, but eventually, if it's going to offset and then get back to the original, I guess, okay, yeah, I think I'm getting a picture of how to do it. Somebody just saying a cloner and a cloner. I'm not sure how that would help, a cloner and a cloner. I think this is all about building the initial pattern. So let me think. What's a good way of us making a pattern here? Because we could have any kind of geometry here. Now, it won't work with offsetting unless we got a bunch of lines. And no, a bunch. Okay, I'm going to ignore the chat because some of the simplistic. There are limitations here that make this not simple, and some of the suggestions I think are a simpler way, but you're not getting to the technical achievement of what the pop and sickle animation was doing there. So what we need to do is, it's almost like just spend some time in Illustrator or something. But I don't want to do that. I want to stay in Cinema here because I'm so clunky in Illustrator. But the idea is that we break up a pattern and repeat it further down the road. So what I'm thinking is, let's go ahead and make a plain object on Z+, and let's go ahead and see our polygons here. We got as many lines across as we want. That's a fine arbitrary amount. We're probably going to use this multiple times. I'm going to make a copy of it right now. And let's go ahead and just get kind of our initial state drawn. So let's go ahead into polygon mode, and let's go ahead and grab, I don't know what letters should we, I guess an R for Rocket Lasso is a fairly obvious thing to do. So let's go ahead and do that. let's just go ahead and eyeball this. I'm going to make a nice big pixelated R here. So let's see, we'll do that. We'll do this. I guess if we're going to be eating up a lot of space, we want this to go really big. I mean, we don't actually have to be this wide, but why not? We'll go 4 deep there. Guess we can go 4 deep there. And 4 deep here. And then we'll go 4, 4. I kind of like that to go out further. So let's reverse that. Let me erase those out. Let's go, let's even do 5. Why not? We'll do an extra 2 and an extra 2. That's not bad. Oh, but we got an extra line there, which makes me want to erase out one of these. And now this one can go out, go in, and we'll make that 4 again. There we go. I think that works. Okay, so that is kind of our initial state. Now we'll end up making all these vertical lines, and I don't want to lose this. So let's go ahead and immediately save a selection. I'm going to select all UR just because my normal is facing the correct direction. Can reselect it. Let's see, should we get rid of one of these lines here? Make that also 4. Yes, we should. I like that better. So we set that selection. So that's one sequence. Now, the idea here is that we would need a second version of this sequence. I'm actually going to, let's just go ahead and name that one R. Copy and paste. And now we're going to move this one up exactly 400 units. And then that one could be kind of random. And then we'll just call that random. And let's go ahead and copy this pattern again and move it up. Now this one would be another R. That would be the R a second time. In fact, so we can see what we're doing, why don't we go ahead and make sure that we are applying this material there. We'll also apply it here. So those are our finals. And we will go ahead and we got our random one. So this one's important. So let me go look at the reference again. So those seem to only, the only blue lines are only the final state. So what these are going to end up being is random vertical lines. So we can just go ahead and select everything there. And yeah, let's go ahead and start breaking up these lines. In fact, I shouldn't have copied that top one because I haven't separated out these lines yet. So let's go ahead and I'm trying to think of the quickest way to do it. The quickest way I can think of separating out all these lines is going to be selecting every other line, which doesn't take too long. Oops. There we go. I got every other line. So now I could, I'm just going to disconnect. The shortcut for that is UD. So these are now the same object, but they are separated. And now we can go ahead and select our polygon selection. I'm also going to hit UD on that. So now those are all separated. And then if we wanted to, we could go and start grabbing some, in fact, I'm going to double click here. And then I think on our reference, yeah, those are all perfectly straight lines. Those are the complete shape. So we can go and grab this and randomly erase out some chunks here. So I'm going to erase out some of that, some of this. This is going to just give us those random lines when they lock because of the way we're disconnecting everything. So we can do some of that, do some of this, do that, one. We'll get rid of those. Now, the important variable here is that, keep in mind, the vertical versions of this are already all separated out. So these should work. So now if I hit UD again, then now we're going to start, let's see, how can I show you? If we were to just select right there and I hit UW, you can see that that is all we're end up with. In fact, we want to see this a little bit more interactively because I think that'd be visually very useful. So what we're going to do is, let's see, offset these somehow. What's a good way of doing it? I want to offset by groups. That's a little more challenging. So I guess we could put this into a fracture. It's not, I don't think it's the most elegant way, but if we put that into a fracture and then let's just put a plane effector onto it, and I'm going to tell the fracture to explode the segments, and now the plane effector should not push it, but it should scale it. Uniform scale, negative 0.9. Actually, it's negative 0.1. Okay, cool. So now we're just shrinking a little bit, 0.01. Okay, just that little bit of separation here so we can see the way they are separate. Actually, what did the heck? Okay, I was trying to think of a nice, elegant way of showing it fast. And the elegant way of showing it fast is just pointing to subdivision surface. So now we can see the separation of each of these different shapes. So you see we get some tinier lines, some bigger lines. So along these lines, it's now become incredibly simple to be like, okay, I want that to be a 2. I want that to be a 2. These are fine. That's fine. I like that. Yeah, so I'm just going to hit UD on those. And maybe these two I'm going to, let's see, optimize? Yeah, optimize will re-weld those together. Let's go ahead and grab these and hit optimize. Shortcut for optimize is UO. Oops. UO, which should weld those together. So yeah, we can weld these various ones together. I'll grab those. UO. I just don't want these to be identical, so I'm merging some of them randomly. We can grab that one, hit UD. So you can see how we're separating these out into the little individual segments. So now that all of those are separated out, we can go ahead to our next line. And now this one, we could go and grab all of our loops again. We're probably going to end up merging this in with the other object, which is fine. I'm trying to minimize redundancy. In fact, I wonder if we should merge all these together right now. And then above and below is my thought. Okay, so yeah, let's finalize this. I'm going to select our random. And we're going to make a copy of it down here as well, because it can go randomly up and down. Although, am I going to be... I don't know. I hope I'm not missing an important detail here, but I think we've got a pretty good methodology. And I'm going to duplicate our main R as well. So you can see I got a whole sequence of these all lined up. So the basic idea here is that we want to combine all of these into one object. So I'm just going to right click, say connect objects and delete. And now these are all combined into a series of objects. Now they are all separate. And let's see, double click. Okay, those are still the R's. I'm going to make sure all those are separated. Let's go ahead and put this into the subdivision surface because we should be able to see them separate. And you can see the R's are all separate. These are still separate individually. But we still need to complete our loops here. So I'm going to hit UL, select that, and come on. There, and there, and there, and there, and there, there, and there, there, and there. Also, I want to throw out an idea here, especially if you are on the Rocket Lasso Slack channel. Hopefully somebody can put the link in the chat. If you have a completely alternative idea of the way to put this together, I would love to see it, because the way we're doing it right here is very specific. And if somebody has like a more procedural or interesting way of doing it, I would love to see that alternative way. So anyway, I've got these new loops. I got UD. Those are all separated out now. And then we've got, I guess, this alternative R up at the top. We did a lot of work separating these out. There's no reason to make that work redundant. So let's go ahead and select that, delete those. And now we could select, carefully select all of these. I'm just going to wave around. I think we've got all of them. UW. Let's see. I think we can clone it. Not something I do very often. Let's go hit enter. Did that work? No, that didn't work. So I can hit undo just because I'm not 100% sure. So that's have all selected. I'm going to hit UP. It's going to split that out as a new copy. Hold down shift as I move it up exactly 800 units. And then remerge those two, connect and delete. And now they've been remerged. I didn't have to go and separate out that R a bunch. So now all that's left to do is separate out some of these random loops. So let's just, I don't know, I'm just going to randomly grab some collections here. And we'll have to remerge some of them. But this is fine. We'll do that. We'll do that. Do that. I get UD, separate a bunch of those. And now we can start remerging some back in again. So like I'm going to take this one and hit, oh, let's grab a few. I'm going to remerge that with that. Let's do that entire line here. Let's go ahead and merge those two together. This one. So now I can hit UO, and those all get blended together. So now we're not crossing that line. Let's do it here. UO. Cool. And let's go ahead here, and we'll merge those, and we'll merge these. We'll merge those back together. Let's put those there. I like this one and that one. UO. Cool. We'll be doing more splits in different places in a minute. UW. Down here, let's just get a couple connections going. So we're crossing that line. UW. Let's separate these. Let's do a tiny block right there. Let's do a line here. UD. And let's merge that and that, that and that, this and this. that and that, UO. So it is pretty fun kind of methodology to do this. We're just getting some cool, quick selections, and we could get real specific and on it. But I find it quicker to just kind of select a couple randomly and merge them together and then separate them out. So let's see, UD. We can get a couple tiny ones. In fact, I like that idea. Let's get a single. Let's get a twofer, or a UD. Oops, I gotta undo that. UD. There we go. So yeah, we're just kind of combining and randomizing and having a little bit of fun there. Merge, merge, merge. Kind of doing alternates there. That's kind of fun. I kind of like that double dot right there. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and do that. And do that. UD. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, we gotta be careful about them touching. UO. UO. UD. Okay, I guess that's enough for us to potentially do a test here. So, okay, here's where things maybe get a little bit challenging. So, those are all working fine. In fact, what I'd probably want to do is let's make a duplicate of our entire object just as a backup. And I'm going to do a quick inner extrude here. So I'm going to hit I for inner extrude. And right now we're preserving groups, which is what I think I want to do. And let's do an inner extrude here, just a little bit, like honestly, a very little bit. And hit UI and then delete out those outlines. And, I think I actually extruded outward. So I'm going to hit I for inner extrude, and we're going to do it, and it's going to make a big old jump. I'll shrink down just a little, hit UI, and delete. And you'll see that even though it looked like I did a big jump, it's actually a pretty small jump overall. Let's go ahead and put in a dark sky background here so we have something to pop out against the background there. Cool. So now we've got that rocking. We got all these little individual dots. Now the idea is going to be that we're going to be focused in, and in fact our final render would be pretty much perfectly framed up on just this letter R. We don't really want to see all the extra ones above it or below it. I guess potentially we could. We might need to make more if we do. So here's the idea. We're now going to let's go ahead and only subdivide this by 1 so we can run quickly. We can subdivide it more later if need be. I'm going to make a fracture object. Let's throw this all into the fracture. I'm going to say explode segments. It is being colored differently, but barely. Let's go ahead and really crank up some color contrast there. Cool. Okay, so this should be exploding out our segments, which means we should be able to grab a... Let's just say whatever. I'm going to grab a random effector. You can see each of our parts can fly away. So already it is kind of stylistically, like that's kind of a cool looking thing. Now, here is where things get interesting. Because everything has to move a very specific amount. And then reach another pattern. Now, I mean, a simple way of doing that would be if everything moved up and everything moved down, then that's simple. And we could also, or do they get offset randomly? There could be some extra details here that I did not consider. I don't know. Anyway, my thought is if we were to add on a plane effector, I'm going to give the plane effector a linear fall off. I don't need to see the color, so I'm going to get rid of the color. And now we've got the field here and the distance. This should be 200 because that's how wide our overall shape is. And I want to make sure our fall off, if we click on the linear field, go to our remapping, you can see we've got a full linear fall off. So cool, that's exactly what I wanted. Back into the plane effector. I want this to go everywhere from negative 100 to positive 100. So we should see this, actually that's not, this negative isn't having an effect. I thought it would. I guess maybe the fall off needs to be okay, even if the fall off is unclamped, that doesn't necessarily make it go down more. We could offset that in a different way, but I thought that would, in the same way the random effector will push things up and down if you make it go negative. I thought that the plane effector would also go negative if we did that. So that's kind of interesting. I guess I really hadn't specifically done that before, but it's not behaving exactly the way I thought it would. Anyway, we don't need to specifically worry about that. But the idea here is we want the end point to travel, well, we want everything to travel up the equivalent of 400, which is double the amount. So let's see. So if this were to suddenly transition up, I guess maybe I was wrong. It's not 400, it's going to be 800. Is it not even 800? Do you see how that didn't really seem to get up to the same point? Or maybe it did. If we pull this over. Yeah, okay, so that does get it all the way up to the point that we want it to. But we want some to go up all the way and some to go down all the way. So right now, this is a linear effect. But we'd actually want this to apply to every other row. That's a little challenging, to tell you the truth. So we did a linear field here, but I think I might transition our linear field instead to a shader field. And the shader field, I'm going to put in a gradient. And the gradient we're going to make sure is, I forgot the knots are individual now. We can say linear. So now you see it's behaving exactly like the linear field was working, but now it's a shader field. But the reason for doing that is we can put that gradient into a posterizer. And now we can get like individual sequences. And so we have 20 segments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think 20 segments across. So if we do 20 levels, it should be 1 per level. But what we actually want to be doing is looping this again and again and again. So I guess it's really, I didn't need a gradient. Sorry, my brain's all over the place on this one. It's a challenging one. But I guess a gradient is fine. We just need the levels. So I'm going to copy our shader, go up a layer, paste it back down again. And let's go ahead and just pull this to the middle and pull that to the middle so there's no transition. Oops. I guess the new bars behave a little differently. We could grab one of these specifically and jump it up to like exactly. We don't have to be super precise, but I'll say 49 and 51 just so they're exactly equivalent. And now we just need to tile that a certain number of times. So if we tell this to be not a custom shader, but I guess I could double it here. If we double, it's 4, 8, 16, 24. It wouldn't exactly match, but then we could just scale it. I don't know. Linear. Oh, yeah, we could also just make that linear. Man, there's so many different ways of doing different tools now. So many different ways of doing everything. Like, I'm pretty dang convinced that what I'm thinking of right now I could have done in a couple different ways as well. But, okay, so none of this is super wasted work because I'm going to copy that shader, make a new shader. Let's go ahead and paste this into the luminance channel just for additional information. Right now I set these are linear, but we could set it to step, and then I could actually pull this black one all the way back and tell this one to be exactly at 50%, and it's a little bit cleaner way of doing that. Anyway, now we can take that and apply it to our fracture object, and I'm going to set the projection of this to flat, and now we should be able to see how this is being projected. And if I T for scale and scale it up, then you can see that we are now essentially perfectly matching our object. If I were to remove our material off here temporarily, you'll see how it's being applied. But what we actually want this to do is be, that's 2 out of 10. So I think 1/10 of that amount. So if we make this length divided by 10, now you can see every other line is getting this applied, which is what we are going for. So because we're doing that, we can grab our shader field and say, I want to look at the luminance channel of the way this material is being applied. Reapply our material there. But now that we're doing that, this is now saying that every other line in this shader field is being told to push the linear effect up and possibly down. Nope, straight up. So this is actually pushing all of those, every other one up. So you'll see that when this does a full movement up, the equivalent of 800, that we then reform our letter. Even though we've got all these random little lines that are traveling, it is now forming that letter. At the same time, we could have, I guess we, how do we make that go up and down simultaneously? What am I missing there? Bobby is saying that we could have two fractures, one pushing up, one pushing down. I agree, but we could also have a second plane, not do two fractures, because that's complicating our hierarchy quite a bit, and we have to make changes to both of them, especially if we start remerging these letters into different shapes. Instead, at the simultaneously, when this plane effector is pushing up on those, we'd actually tell it to go double the distance. So we'll do 1600, and that's going to push up way more. And then we can also add in a second effect. Do we need a second plane effector, or do we need something that's erasing them out? I think we just need a second plane effector. So I'm going to copy and paste our plane effector, make sure it's also being applied. And I'm going to, we are inputting in this plane effector, this shader effector, but I'm going to put in an invert. So that should do the opposite of what the other one was doing. And now in this one, I'm going to tell these opposite ones to go negative. Actually, I didn't need to double the distance. This is still 800. Cool. So hopefully that invert on one of them is accounting for it. So let's see. If we were to pull back on this, oh, no, I did something wrong because it doesn't seem to like that. Maybe it was the inverting isn't there we go. We don't, let's not invert via the plane effector inverting its input. We're going to invert. Oh, interesting. That also reset it. This is being more challenging than I thought it would. Can't help but think that we're doing this more difficult than the original accounted for. I'm interested in pursuing this because we're learning some technical things, but I don't trust the second plane effector. Now, what I wanted to do is, if this is pushing up one level, we could actually have it push up 2 levels. And then we could just make the entire thing also travel downward at the same time. So if we were here, then it's traveling up. And then if we tell everything to go down one layer, I don't know. I'm not sure if that makes sense or not. But let's just find out. Let's go ahead and copy and paste our plane effector again. Except this time, I'm not worried about the shader effector. Get rid of that. Inside our, not our fall off, but our fractures effectors. Let's put that second plane effector. And this time I'm going to say I want all of these to travel negative 800, perhaps. And now by grabbing both of these plane effectors and animating the distance, you can see we start out with 1R, and then this is going to travel both up and down because one is pushing up double the distance, and the other is saying no, push down the exact amount. And then we end up with our final shape again. Now keep in mind our final framing is going to be super zoomed up on just that final letter, so we don't see what's above and below it. So we're at the beginning, and then suddenly we're going to get all of this motion. Now right now it's just up and down. It's just perfect opposites. But you can see that these will travel. We get all this randomness, and eventually the final letter will reform. So conceptually that part is working. The only tricky part is that it's so linear. Like all these are so perfect. Now we can potentially, can we fake that? I was going to say we could fake it by changing the speed that some of these are applied. I mean, it's pretty cool by itself. Like I like that effect, but obviously it's not the entirety of what we're going for. Nope. Yeah, that's interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, that is cool. I'm going to give this a quick save so that this is a file that people could dissect if they want to. But I have some other thoughts now. I have some definite different thoughts on a modification of this. So what are we going to call this? Sliced letter offset. Good enough for that. Okay. Let me think. Okay. let's pretend that we don't care at all what that looks like. I'm going to go and turn those off entirely. And let's pretend that we don't care what this shape is at all. That could be anything it wants to be. And then we go and we start randomly moving everything. I guess we do still need the slices for them to travel randomly on some sort of set distance. Yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling good about my idea here. We want all of these to travel randomly. So we do need the shader effector, but we need this to we need it to go back to kind of the first effect we were doing, which was the gradient offset, or feeding this a linear field. Select that, set this back to linear, put that into a, actually I don't even think we need a posterizer because they can only hit how they hit. So yeah, so that this behaves as if we put a posterizer in it without putting a posterizer in. Go figure. Unless that needs to be for the center point, I guess it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt. Let's see if putting in a 20 there. Oh, that's strange. Oh, I also need to change the scaling. No, I did change the scaling. I'm not entirely sure that makes sense. Let's see. You see how they do seem to have some different movement there, but you see how at the end it's fairly lined up? That seems strange to me. The shader effector is still looking at this material to get rid of the filler width. All right, what am I missing now? This is this little bit's confusing me. Scott Benson is saying time offset may work. Yeah, time offset is the next step after I get these offset the proper way I want them to be. So if this effect is not applied, it's fine. They're all lined up on the bottom. It starts traveling. It's leaving every other one. That's what's throwing me off now. This shouldn't be every other one. Because we scaled up our shader field here. So that should just straight up be fine. Paste. See, that's fine. What am I missing here, guys? Linear would work. I don't want to eyeball. We're so close here. We're so close. In the fall off, I'm just going to make a linear field. Cool. Linear field, whatever. Let's make a fall off to 200. Now they're all offset. That's fine. Because that is going to, but we still need, I guess we don't need every other one. We just need it to be increments of 10. Yes. Okay. New plan. I'm excited. Here we go. Plane effector. All good. Is it a plane effector or a shader effector? Oh, man. Sorry, this is the kind of one I would bail on this and move on to a different question, but I think we're learning and discovering some cool things about the way some of the fields stuff works, and some of being able to approach things with a lot of different ways. So we could do a straight up shader field and then feed in the shader and have them travel up randomly. I think that might actually work. So simplify. Okay, MoGraph. Okay, fracture object, shader field. Cool. Direct shader field. The shader field is going to be affecting what? Not the scale, but just the position Y. Let's see if this can do positive and negative. We're not feeding a shader yet, so possibly. I don't know yet. So let's throw in a noise, and I'm just curious if this is traveling up and down. So this is traveling up and down. Cool. Now, you'll see that we're getting some cool random motion. Sometimes they go faster, sometimes they go slower. But it's happening everywhere in every dot. We don't want that. What we want is to go to our noise and make this infinitely tall on Y. So now we get these vertical stripes. And I'm going to go ahead and crank up our contrast here. We can crank up the contrast until we start seeing uniformity again. So we don't want to go too high. So there we go. Lots of randomness there. Essentially, we want a full range of black to white. So now all of these are randomly moving up and down. That's all good. But what we need to do is actually put this into a posterizer And we do need this to only be a certain number of colors. And the reason for that is that we need to move them up on even increments, I think. So these are 20 by 20, so we can move it up 1/20th. So I'm going to put this as 20 different segments. So that should mean that when this is applied 100%, this should be able to move up to 20. And let's see, ultimately what that means is what we want to do is set this up so that when this is at 100%, that these lines all still line, like they'd all be on an even line. You see right now it's up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Right now there's some combination of things that we are currently looking at that will give us the effect that we're looking for. Now I'm feeding you through a shader effector, and the shader effector is not necessarily projecting on the way that I'm thinking it is. So we can't trust that. So that's feeding in a shader, and it's just pushing it up and down. But the shader effector does indeed push up and down. It is also using an alpha. I don't care about that. Off. So do I just need to double this amount, or there's more to it? We are shading. We want that to be in even increments. Oh man, we're getting close. We're getting close. This is the idea, that we should be able to go complete randomness on this if we can get this working. But it's all about the way this is going to be projecting. Hopefully you guys are following the concept here. Is if we can get a single line traveling across, then every unit of 100 is going to be exactly what we're going for. Which does mean, this might actually have to be 200 or 100 or 400. I'm not sure which. And we need the projection lined up. Oh man, there's a lot of variables here. If we get the combination correct, but with a 100%, some of these could be moved very far. In fact, they could be double the amount, which is where the 400 comes in. But hopefully that's not introducing an 800. 400. 200, none of those are quite lining up, which is making me think the projection isn't working. But if we change this shading, this is how far they move up and down. Okay, I hope you guys are somewhat enjoying this, because I'm enjoying the challenge here. There's some really cool stuff going on. And I think that this type of looping idea will be really powerful for us to understand for the future. So it's worth us putting in the extra time. And because we're spending so long on one, maybe we'll go extra long on today's show. Okay. Now I wanted to use a shader effector, and we could say just feed it a color. But the color is going to automatically push it in one direction. So even if we were to put in a shader fall off in a shader, I don't trust that. But we could have them all travel vertical. That might be the better way to do it. Tricky. There's some fun stuff here. I'm going to hit undo because I want to get this back again. Cool. Goodbye shader effector, back to the plane effector. MoGraph, plane effector. Now, we should be moving upward. I'll say move up to 100. We're going to go to our fall off. We're going to add in a shader field. The shader field is going to be referencing a material. The material is going to be this material that we had last time. Let's go ahead and paste in the posterizer that we had into that. And now we should be able to apply this to our fracture, and we're going to set this once again to flat, and we're going to make sure that it is matching our overall scale. So I'm just going to eyeball that. It should be fine. That is matching. So now our shader effector can reference the luminance channel of this effect, and that's going to be randomly pushing them up again. Now it's only, unfortunately, pushing up because it's a plane effector, and the plane effector is told only go up. Even if we pull down, it doesn't go down. That's fine. We still just need these to be an even increment when it's applied 100%. Assuming that the shader effector is applying everything correctly, we should be able to find our magic number, which should line them all up perfectly. And to tell you the truth, I'm not seeing that number. 100% fall off. We got 20 units, unless it's supposed to be 10. It's possible it's 10. Half the amount? Oh yeah, let's also get off that fall off. Did that change things? Yeah, that's changing it a little bit. So that was already making so we couldn't trust it. This filter width is amazing. It's the closest thing we have to a Gaussian blur. But it does make it so we have to be very careful in our placement. In fact, I'm going to be pretty precise with this. Let's go ahead and make this exactly 200. So I'm going to the coordinates of our material, 200, 200, 200. Cool. Just be very precise because essentially the effect that we're doing here is very precise. So that's applying perfectly linearly. It has to be one of these 20 colors. Potentially, let's just simplify. And I'm going to say it has to be one of these 10 colors. They might double up if that's the case. They might double up, but I think we can live with that. And now we can go to our plane effector, and now this is merely a essentially pushing this up until we see all of our lines align again right there. Oh, that's a weird place for them all to align. It's aligning on 181. That's weird. That's really weird. 181. What am I missing? 181. That's bizarre. And, I mean, it's not necessarily 181 precisely. In fact, we should take that number and double it. And now we should get a little bit more of an offset. In fact, why don't we double it? We'll go times 4. So now you see it's because we got a little bit more tolerance here, I can very precisely line those all up again. And now we could, divide that by 8. Yeah, now we're at 181.25. I don't know what this number means, but that's a very strange number. But the point being is when we apply our strength effector exactly 100%, all of these realign again. They are realigned, which means if we were to animate our strength up to 200%, then that should again align itself. If we animate this up to 400, it is again going to align itself. So now we have something that will automatically continually align itself. So we can go ahead and essentially push this as far as we want to, and it's randomly pushing them all up, not down, but all up. And it's doing a pretty, so you see the point here. When we hit these nice even increments, they will realign, which means we can now push this up essentially an arbitrary amount. Now, the unfortunate thing, of course, is this is only pushing up and not down, so we'd have to do more to force it to go down. I am kind of curious about why it won't push down unless we need to give our fall off a negative value. I wonder if we could. I'm just curious if we could. I'm going to feed a solid, set it to normal. And can we set the value to negative? No, we can, and it doesn't force it down. I'm going to unclamp. Oh, cool. Oh, okay, it worked. It worked. Ha. Okay, so we can make the plane effector go negative by applying a solid and saying it is being fed a negative value. So my thought is if we apply a negative 100 here, that pushes down. And if we say this should subtract on our other value, I don't entirely trust that, but let's see. At 0, we should be aligned. Are we traveling down as well as up? No, some are traveling less, but it's not entirely. So let's try negative 200. Wow, that's just bizarre. Unless a positive, if we subtract the positive, is that the way that works? Oh my, it is. Okay. Interesting. Okay. It's almost like math. Hopefully I didn't lose anybody here, but here's the thought. This can only travel downward. It's being fed a negative value. So I was going to try and feed it a negative 100 and then subtract it. But if I fed a negative 100 and subtracted it, it's actually a positive 100. So we actually have to set our solid up to a 100 and then subtract the 100, which means we are now subtracting 100 from that total value, I believe, because we're unclamped. So that means as we increase this value, you see that these lines are traveling. Actually, it looks like they're traveling entirely downward now. Nothing's going up, which means we actually want to subtract 50% of that. Exactly 50%. Double click on that line. You can type in your number. So now, yeah, there we go. Now a plane effector is traveling up and down, which is cool. That's good knowledge to have. So now, yeah, we can go up, and now we can crank this number way up. So we can go 400. We can go 800, and these lines can be as big and tall as we want. We just need it so that when we get to the end that we are perfectly framed up as maximally as possible. So let's just say that's our framing. So how far up can we go until we start running out of lines? So that is good. Let's go double the amount again. Okay, that's too much. So let's do 800 plus 400. That is still too much as well, so I'm going to subtract 200. As long as we're working in increments of 200, I think we're fine. Now, we do have some coincidence of framing here, but it seems like 1,000 is just another even increment where they do successfully align because it's a unit of, or a multiple of 200. Now we can't go up another 200 because then we go too far. So it looks like if with the current height that we built this, 1,000 is the magic number. That's completely fine. So at the time of 1,000, or at the time of 90, we're going to have this animate up to 1,000. Time of 0, we're going to have it be at 0. That's all we got to do. And now, let's go ahead and grab our keyframes. And we'll just set these to linear because why not? I guess they don't have to be linear. We can ease in and ease out. Why not? Okay, so our pattern is existing here. So all we have to do is when this is offset super randomly, all these pieces randomly moving up, randomly moving down. And in fact, we're not stuck to this particular pattern. You can see that these two lines are coincidentally moving the exact same amount because they end up being the same color. So we can go back into our material editor here, and I can put this to 20 perhaps. And okay, that didn't change anything, so that leads me, I'm not sure what that leads me to believe. But I guess the point here being is, let's go ahead and push this just a little bit like this. And what we want to see is all of these offset to different amounts. And if they look like they're kind of similar, then it's too close. We can just start doing different random seeds and make sure that none of them are aligning too heavily. Also, this global scale could be a little big, so that might be influencing. So I could shrink that up smaller. It should still force it. But it looks like, I think it's just sheer coincidence. But once again, I'm just going to keep on. There we go. Nope, got some similar. That looks pretty good. There might be some that are moving the same speed, but I just had to find a random seed where they all felt a little bit different, and that one feels pretty good. I like the way it looks. And as we get to the end, actually, randomly, we have some colors that were more extreme. So our 1,000 ended up being too powerful for the way this ended up lining up, which is fine. We just need to go over here and start subtracting 200. 200 is the good number there, so going straight up to 800 was a good amount. Oh, no, I just noticed these are not quite aligning again. Why are they not aligning? Is it because of this 800? At 100, yeah, at 100 they're not aligned again. Changing the colors we fed through. That's interesting. I'm not entirely sure I'm understanding. Something about the way those colors are being fed through is not necessarily aligning everything for us. So we need to push this up until we get the perfect lineup again. Which seems to 760. What is that? What is 760? I'm going to divide that by 2. It's still aligned. Let's go ahead and divide that by 2. It is not aligned. So what just happened? Why hitting undo did it get rid of my number? What did I say? 760? 7. I don't know why undoing got rid of my number there. Oh, I guess I was at some arbitrary amount, wasn't I? I was here. Man. Everything was starting to make like logical sense, and now we've lost it. I want to be precise again because we were looking real good there. So I'm keyframing this up to 100. 100 is the number that we need to align. So this needs to push far enough for all of the numbers to align again. I just want to visually do it. And essentially, it needs to move far enough. I might understand. I understand what happened. When we were only doing 10 increments, When we were only doing 10 increments, it only had to be half the amount. We doubled the resolution when we doubled the amount of segments I could travel across. $180. Okay, well, this seems to align again at 760. The idea that's this round number and is aligning really well is encouraging. Once again, let's try dividing it by 2 and see if it aligns. It does. 380. Bizarre number to me, but okay. Divide again. I doubt it will align. Okay, so 380. Because we doubled the resolution, we're at about double the amount. We also potentially are hitting a slightly more extreme version of the color. So that still makes sense in my brain. Which is dangerous, but I guess good. So now we can go ahead and start traveling this in increments again. Once again, we want to push this as far as we can until it breaks, which apparently now is only 400, 500. Nope, it's only 400 now because of how extreme we made the differences. But if we go ahead and keyframe that, then now these should be all separate, go in completely different directions, completely different speeds, but at the end, all be aligned again. And the alignment is all that matters. Let's go ahead and give this a quick save as number 2. And now what we need to do is essentially colorize these. Yeah, we need to colorize these. Now, I think this might be cool. Watch this. If we copy our fracture, now ignore our original one. I'm going to make this fracture editable. In fact, I'm going to put it into a connect object. And let's go ahead and make that editable. And now we've got all these crazy materials applied. I don't care about any of that. Get rid of everything. So now we've just got this geometry. And now we want our letter again. So actually, I will unhide our other text. And I'll turn off our plane effector, so we're back to our original letter, because all I want to use this as, I want to use this temporarily as a template for figuring out which ones to select. I'm going to scoot it in the background just a little bit, or actually maybe even the foreground. It's gonna be okay. That's fine. I'm going to just go to our selection tool, and I'm going to select and select. Nice, nice, nice. I'm excited. I knew there was going to be a fairly elegant, logical way of doing this one, and this feels right. Because we just moved all those to an arbitrary position. Now I've got that selection. Let's hide that. Make sure we've got a complete selection of all these. We get some weird normals facing different directions, but whatever. Let's go ahead and set the selection. Now, what's cool, hopefully, is these polygons have these same indexes as their relatives over here. So my thought is if we apply the selection tag to that object, and let's make a new material just so we can clearly see it. We got a red one in the color channel. Got to remember to make the changes over in this this menu over here. So anyway, click on color channel. Let's go ahead and make this red. Let's go ahead and apply this material onto that one and limit it, of course, to that new selection tag. Boom! Except, why is it repeating? What? Why is it repeating? Unless they all have the same index, that would be weird. They shouldn't have all the same index. Like, I gotta think about this one for a second. Think. Why is it repeating? That doesn't make any sense to me. never mind. It does make sense. We have 2 polygon tags named the same thing. So we just call this red and drag in red. There we go. Okay. Okie dokie. So we've also got our original... We've got our original R's selected here. Actually, that's not the original R. Those are the original R's. I'm just going to select this original one. UF. Oh, wait. They're all separated out, so you can't do a UF. Deselect all those. Deselect all those. And now we can reset that selection. Set selection. We can get rid of these stripes, which is what was confusing us. So, oh, interesting. Okay, we just ran into another slight problem, which is something I hadn't considered. But we can still see the effect pretty well here. The problem is that we didn't account for some of them have to move a minimal amount. They have to move at least as much as one space, like one full unit. But some of them are moving very little. In fact, some of them might have been like being applied a black color, which means don't move at all, which means they're all getting to that same position again. We can temporarily ignore that and just go ahead and apply our plane effector. And with any luck, so we should start out with our R there, and when these all move, and they're not at all in the pattern. And does that selection tag not transfer over? La 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 la. Thinking, man, there's a lot of weirdness with this one, everybody. It's fun. I like the pattern that we got there. It was going to be broken anyway, but I thought we'd still see the red one when we went to our final position, but we're not. Now you do see we get this pattern here, but maybe the indexes are not lining up. Makes this a bit more challenging. Man, I was feeling good about this one. We got our R, and then we randomly move up and down until we get to our new locked off position. And the new locked off position should have had our perfect UVs. All right, we're going to try again, just in case I messed something up there. We're going to do a simplified version of this. So we're going to just copy and paste the fracture again. I'm going to, let's just current state to object it. Oh, I guess we need the, okay, actually doing that just gave us the information that we needed. It doesn't tell me how to fix it, but I just right-clicked and I said current state to object, which is when you say current state to object, that's effectively what it's doing, even though we don't see it behind the scenes. That's like parametrically what's happening behind the scenes. And you'll see it's actually exploded every single polygon out into its own polygon, which means when it's put back in the connect object, it isn't the same order. We're not moving these based off of their built-in number. So this does not necessarily mean that we've really lost much in the way of work. It just means we cannot be offsetting this in a fracture. Now, we've already broken apart our individual elements. So my thought is let's pull this out of the fracture. The fracture is no good, but we still need the way the material is being applied. And what we need to do is deform our geometry. I'm going to change this to deform the polygons. The same thing. So it's like, yeah, deform the polygons. So now hopefully, nice. Okay, so we didn't need the fracture at all because we already exploded our different segments. We just barely had to do any changes. And now you can see all of our pieces are still moving the exact same way, which is great. Now, we already saw that we had a problem where we need all these to move a minimum distance. Otherwise, it doesn't entirely change because you see like this line right here is barely moving, and we actually do need all of these orange pieces to move away a minimum amount, or they won't, they'll still be kind of infecting the new layout. So but we are deforming these, which means they will maintain their UVs. Okay, cool. Actually, this is pretty exciting. I like that. And this is so much more elegant now, doing this as a deformation instead of a fracture object. Fracture objects are a little bit, it's slightly clunky. It's kind of a brute force thing. So, we kept everything here pretty clean. So, we don't need that. Okay, so let's go ahead and... I mean, on some levels, we could extend this further. Looks like our selection tag got slightly messed up at some point. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, look at how we got these two little ones hanging out down there. Don't know why. Deselect them. And then our selection right there, I thought they used to be there, but now they're not. I'm just going to deselect those as well. So pretend that didn't happen. Set selection, so those are just gone. Now what we could do is also extrude or get more going up and down. That would just give us more range. I guess there's not that many. If we wanted everything, if we do want everything to have this nice bigger transition, we would want more up and down, and we're not going to have that big of a range of randomness if we don't do that. I'm trying to avoid doing that in case you can't tell. If we do, it's going to take a lot longer because we already did this inner extrude, and this inner extrude is going to cause us problems. Although, looks like actually, I think we can do it because smartly I saved our previous one, so we can unhide our previous one, and we're in a earlier state. What did I just do? Startup. Sorry, I misclicked and. And again, deleted my object manager. Do we still have our selections all funky? Yes. Okay. So, okay, I don't want to lose anybody because we're doing a kind of a big reset here. I want to be able to extend our stuff up and down. And I couldn't do it with the other one because I already did this inner extrude. But now we're back, and we have this earlier version, so now we can just take a slight step back, delete some things we don't need. So here's our R selections. We don't need these anymore. And we don't need these anymore. So I'm going to resave that selection. So we just get this one in the middle. Cool. Oh, I'm also assuming that those little R's up there were because I missed the selections. Cool. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and grab our edges here. And grab that whole row of edges. And then deselect that row of edges. And we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. Nice. And now each of these is 20 units tall. So I selected that, checked the size. It was good. Hit layer D for extrude. Extrude 10 or 20 rather. Make sure we're on top and bottom. Hit apply, and then you can see we've extruded up and down successfully. And there are 20 of them. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So that should be one extra unit's worth of them traveling upward. And we just need a couple of extra. Actually, I'm not even going to separate these because they'll travel in line, and we will do the cuts after the motion, because we need to cut out our final R again. And I think, yeah, this should just work. So we should be able to steal our plane effector, put it back in there, and then as we scrub, all the lines are still traveling. So now we're back, we're clean, and we've got extra sequences so we can push things extra far. Cool. Not too bad, not too bad. Whew. Save it. Go into our material. In our material, let's go ahead and get a minimum amount we have to travel. We can do that by going into our noise and pulling up, I think, our low clip. And the further I pull the low clip, oh, we go up and down. So we do that and we do that. I got to think for a second. Do we need no gray? Gray? Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Okay, think about this logically. Right now, because of the way we built it, it travels up and it travels down, which means it travels up when it's white and travels down when it's black, which means it stays in the middle when it's gray. So if we have any gray colors in here, they don't move. Like the middle gray, the in-between grays are good, but this middle gray is no good. So one thing, I mean, we can crank up the contrast, and that could potentially help, but I don't want to push that too far. So instead, let's not worry about the contrast. Let's just leave this natural, and we will put this into, it's inside of a levels, which is fine. 20 levels. When we say, I gotta ask another question. So if we say 2 middle gray, 4 is not black. So we might not get the full range of black to white if we do the posterize. We might need to manually do those colors. No, I trust it. I'm just going to, I have to trust it. So we're going to go with, it's going back to the original, where were we, 20? Yeah, back to the 20. Okay. So now, we are going to feed this noise into either a filter or a gradient. Either work. Let's do a filter. So where's the filter? Filter. So by putting that that noise into a filter, we now get access to our gradation curves. And now we got black to white, which is fine, but we don't want these middle grays. So what we need to do is make 2 points here. And I'm going to pull one down and pull one over like so. Something like that. So what we're saying here is like no middle grays. And they don't need to be, I don't think they have to be identical, but we do need to just kind of crush those grays out of there. I'm also going to select all the points and say they are 0 angle, 0 length. Yeah, Paul, there is a curves in the filter, so you can control the R, the G, the B, and the RGB. So anyway, look, exactly what we were hoping would happen is happening, which is these middle colors are going away. Tell you the truth though, like they still, let's go back to our middle. So let's zoom up. So we're kind of framed, approximately framed here. And now when we go all the way to the end, we want nothing in the middle, and some of them are still sneaking in. So we need to push this further and further still. There we go. So by doing that, we've crushed out all the potential middle grays, and they've all traveled far enough that they have to. Now, my only worry is that we've crushed everything so much that there aren't enough gradations anymore. So that you see how these are kind of moving somewhat uniformly. They're not, it looks like there are 2 speeds traveling downward and maybe 2 speeds traveling upward. So we don't have enough layers of gradation to fully have eliminated everything from the center point. So we might need to jump up here and give ourselves more levels. So I'm going to go up to 30, and now we want to see if we get a little more variation here. I mean, there is some variation. I'd really love if some of those were moving slower. I mean, we do even have like this inverse property where the taller we make these lines, the less we have to crush the middle. Which, honestly, because of the way we set it up, that's not too bad. Let's go do that one more time. We still have the edges selected, so I'm going to hit D for extrude. And let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I guess in theory we could have done one offset of 200 and divided it by 10, but whatever. Okay, so those are now further, which means we have more room to travel. I'm going to put this back to 20 because at this 30, it scares me. So if we go all the way over here, you can now see that in theory, we can crush it less. Although not too much. You see, how's our framing? Okay, that is the framing. So if we do not pull that in far until it's suddenly like, oh, hey, we're hanging out. So that did not, didn't this help as much as I thought it would. Now that does potentially mean that we can have more levels. I'm going to say 40. 40 scares me. Also, I mean, what are we seeing here? Let's go ahead and shrink that down a little bit. They're so dang uniform. Why are they so dang uniform? Although, now that I think about it, I mean, okay, because we see them traveling differently. Sorry, gotta say my thought process. So, if our noise becomes really small, I feel like our individual lines are more likely to be gray. They're more likely to be gray because they're more likely to average out a whole bunch of stripes. So if we start making them larger, then they're less likely to be aligning with each other. So I'm just going to actually start dragging until we start seeing the kind of variation I'm hoping for. Dragging, dragging, dragging. Let's see. I mean, they're all traveling different speeds, but oh my god, look at that middle gray one. Again, seed, seed. I guess, okay, we can just do some different random seeds in some of them. Oh man, that noise is so big. So much uniformity. What am I missing here? I mean, Paul's saying, do I still need the posterize? The reason the posterize is needed is if you don't posterize, then they'll never align. We'll never get them to realign. It would be coincidence if they realign. Instead, we're saying like if we say 20 posterize, then it would need to, they could realign in increments of some multiple of 20, which is why posterize is indeed needed. Now we are feeding through a posterize, a big old posterize of 40. We could try going back to 20, but I think that would just exacerbate the problem. And I mean, I guess an important thing here is like, let's go ahead and put in, oh, you can only go up to 40, which is interesting. 40 is the max. Sorry, a little bit lost in a train of thought. I mean, I'm trying to, okay, that's the filter. Let's just, for the sake of example, let's just remove the filter, or let's remove the posterize. Paste. Okay, so now you can see that, let's just see what we get. So even without the posterize, we can see that we're getting a significant amount of uniformity because none of them are allowed to move very slowly. And none of them are allowed to move very slowly because if they move too slowly, we don't offset from them. We don't get away from them. So we have to move this minimal amount. So what's happening is that we've given them a very small range in which they're allowed to move, and there's just not that much randomness in that little segment and that little segment. There's a lot of things happening in that range that we're just saying, well, that's not allowed. I'm just trying to think if there's any way around that. I'm kind of feeling like there isn't. Zoom. Think-a-dink-a-doo. Do. If we don't, I mean, the only way to get more movement is to get more segments up and down, which I mean, this is running incredibly fast. It's not a bad thing. So we could do that, but we're going to get diminishing returns there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right. I mean, the more range that there is, the more speed variation that we can potentially get. So now you should travel, and now, oh, okay. We've been not pushing them that far. So all of these extra little extrusions that we've done up and down, we have not been giving ourselves the additional range that was potentially there. So we could start pushing these way further. In fact, you can see I can push these so far. That's the part where I was, even though I was increasing these, I was not increasing this amount. You can see we could probably put this, and I don't know what this final amount will be, but we could be going up to a way bigger amount, like 1600. So we have introduced a lot more randomness just right now. So now, if we frame up again, now we should be looking way better. So now you can see that we should be moving, but it also means that I believe that we can go way the heck out here. So that's too much. I don't know what the final number will be, but that's too much. But that does mean that we can go in here, and now we can crush this. Remember before I was like, oh, we should be able to crush them tighter together, and then we couldn't? I was like, oh, that's weird. This is why I forgot to extend that out. So that can go way up, and this can go way down. So now our middle ground is pretty minimal. So now everything's being forced. Everything can move all very randomly as far as they want. But now we get all sorts of speed variation, and it will eventually be clear. Awesome. Okay, that is what we were missing. Okay, now we need our even increment again. I think our best bet typically was going to 100. So let's go 100. And how can we see this cleanly? We just need these to align. And what was the number we were tweaking? Oh, I said 100, not 1,000. Oh yeah, so it's just this the movement amount. So yeah, let's just start at 0 again. I don't think this is too difficult. We just wait until... I mean, I would think if we were doing this perfectly, properly, I would think that there is a mathematical number here that we could be like, and that's the number. But I don't know what that is. We've had enough trouble with it, and then eyeballing it does give us some pretty good alignment. Did we put this back in the filter? Or we didn't put it back in the posterizer, so that's an important variable. Posterizer. 20 units. I said 20 units. 0 filter. There we go. All right. Now we can start that process again. Brink. Okay, so is applied 100. Let's start scooting. Nope. Honestly, what a good way of doing this is I'm looking at the slowest line, so like this one, and following that one until it suddenly is going to be in alignment with all the other ones. Right there. Boom. That's the magic number, 760. This 60 number keeps on appearing pretty often. Dividing it back to 180. So I think that unit 20 is definitely some sort of magic number for what we have here. I don't know what the math translates to. I don't know what the math translates to exactly, but yeah, we're clearly getting some sort of consistency there. So that means something. I don't know what, but it means something. But now that we have our magic 380, which is aligning us after 100 units, that means it's guaranteed to be aligned in any measurement here. So now we can push this as far as we want. And as long as we hit the closest 100 units right here, so we can do 400, 400, boom, they should all magically align. Perfect. Quite pleased with that. Okay, so now we should be able to hit play, and now zoom, all those randomly move, and then they'll all realign perfectly at the end again. And now that they're all perfectly realigned, we can go to this end. We can go ahead and right click and say current state to object, which makes a duplicate of our original. So now we've got this. This should be the same UVs because it is the same UVs. Sorry, I shouldn't have said UVs. It's not the same UVs. It is the same index for each polygon. So it's a little difficult to see them right now. What's a good way of seeing them? X-ray? I never do that. Lines? No, I can't do that. I just want to get the same selection. Okay, I'm going to take this object. I'm going to scoot it backward a hair. We're going to turn off that effect. And now polygon selection. And I'm just going to... I can't see them. Well, let's hit NB so we can actually see that. Even though I can't see the selection, the object behind it, as long as I'm selecting this carefully enough, I should be selecting all those polygons. Grabbing all these, grabbing all these, grabbing those, grabbing those, grabbing those. And then this foot over here. Okay, I think that should be it. Let's go ahead and hide that. And, hey, where is it? What? Where are my polygons? What happened? Okay, that's a weird one. All right, apologies for that. I don't know what that was. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, they're all set. Current state object. Wait, I don't trust these. Go away, go away. Right click. Current state object. New polygon object. Give me those polygons. Okay, yeah, polygons. Cool, cool, cool. Makes sense. Now, I want to just make a selection. Well, I mean, there's a million ways we could do this. I'm just trying to do it the quickest way. And then I took this and I scooted it backward just a little bit. And then turned that off deformation-wise. And now let's make sure that, yeah, that still exists now. Go figure. I have no idea. I mean, because that one was a little clunky. I wasn't going to do it. But we can go ahead to grab our polygon selection as well. And I'm going to say tolerant selection. And now we should be able to go boom, 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 bum, bum, boom, bum, 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 bum. And it should have grabbed all those. And we'll grab all of these. And then we'll grab all those. It'd be really cool if there was a more parametric way to do this, which there very well may be. Now we hide that one. Check our polygon selection. Got it. Looks like we got all of them. Cool. Let us set our selection. Let's go ahead and call it red. Now we put that onto our new object, and let's go ahead and apply our red material. And let's hide that one. Unhide that one. Turn on our offset. Did I accidentally grab some polys that we didn't want? Maybe. Oh, I did. Ha! I didn't even see him. Okay. Accidentally grabbed a few extras. Okay. Set that selection, move it up, delete that one. That's our new selection. Call that one red. Grab this, make sure that that red material is applied. Unhide that. Hide that. Got our letter back. It is offset. It is a different color. We can go ahead and turn on our subdivisions, and that won't render. And now we can grab that. Actually, we just grab our timeline. Zoom. And then we get a second R. Cool. And now really we just want to set that to orange so that we have two orange ones. And now we can go and zoom in a bit just to get our framing. And now we scrub. And then boom, we get the letter again. I guess the only thing we'd want to do is re-weld those together. And I mean, we get the color, but we want to re-weld them so that each of those becomes its own little dot. Which isn't difficult, I don't think. We just we need our final layout. Actually, maybe that would be a little difficult because we deselect those. Don't worry about this. But these that let's go ahead and make it red so we can see it. So those are our new ones. So we need those all to be... Actually, no, I don't think it's difficult. As long as they're not touching each other. Those are touching. But if we go and we say optimize, those all got welded together. And now we just go and do our... we just go and deselect these because those got welded together. We don't want that. But if we were to deselect them, and unfortunately, I'm going to hold down, let's see, yeah, I'm going to hold down Shift as I drag my middle mouse button left, and I can deselect that and that. We just need to deselect any pair that's touching each other and de-weld them, because otherwise they will be welded together. And I hit U-D to separate those. And yeah, they re-welded together, so they became units, and then they de-welded, which means those should all be separate now, which means if we go and turn those back on again, then we get our final R. It looks like I failed to break a couple of the connections that might make sense. I'm sure it makes sense. I just didn't want to go through and do loops through all of them, but actually this is incredibly simple. If we go and we grab our polygons and I say, yeah, select, don't worry about visible. So I can just grab like the first one, second one, third one, fourth one. I don't know where to tell. I'm just estimating based on the previous one. You can see this really thin line. Grab that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. And now I can just say, go back here and I should have every other stripe, I think. U, D. Fortunately, I still had those selected. I wish I had deselected. Do it again. Actually, we'll do the opposite. That one and that one. I'm going to hit Alt-D to turn my axis off. That one. That one. That one. That one. That one. That one. Nope. That one. That one. That one. U-D should separate all of those. All these stripes should be disconnected. And now if we turn all those back on again, there we go. It fixed the R. And now those are all welded together. It does seem that what? We can what? Okay, okay, I just learned something that's kind of crazy. Because we're deforming this with a plane effector, if I change this over like this, I still have selections. I can make new selections. If I double click the selection tag, we have this here. All that current state to object and duplicating, moving to a different position and all that, for some reason it's remembering in this new position. That's really weird to me, like that's maintaining it. In fact, it only seems to be happening because of our subdivision surface. I'm not entirely sure that's supposed to happen, but it's working, so okay. The only thing I was going to say was that should be separated. That should be separated. A couple of these were still connected, so I'm just going to deconnect them. So that one shouldn't. No, nope, nope. UD. Now those all separate. They become their own little things. I don't think any of those merged in. And of course, with all of those new stripes that we had done, like we didn't do any disconnecting of those. So like we would want to go through and spend a little time adding in more breakpoints. Not something I'm terribly worried about. We could add in a few here, but I don't even know if we get to those. So maybe some of them. Zoom. Zoom. The important thing here is that none of the ones I'm dragging are touching each other, because if they did, that would break things. UD. So you see I'm just making more pill shapes. Cool. Okay, so yeah, we could have made that selection way faster. Also that and that. UD. Yeah, we could have made that pill shape. This selection way faster without current state to object, dragging it to a different object and all that. So it's just working really well along those lines. But now we could hit play, zoom, and we reform the letter. And of course, we have two different colors just so we can see it, but now we can merge them into one. So now we've got a constantly transitioning thing. Having said all that, we actually haven't gone all the way. I am going to stop here Well, I guess we might be able to stylize this a little bit if we want to make it look pretty. And I will take another question. I'm not going to end right here. Thank you, Crossfader, for putting the link for the Rocket Lasso Slack, which the URL is just rocketlassoslack.com. So everybody who's listening, come on and hang out with us. But in any case, this is working. But the problem is that you'll see that, I mean, if we were to make this a looping animation, we'd have to go forward and then backward, which could work. But I think in the other one, it went forward and then forward again. So we'd have to make sure that the same pattern existed for the beginning and end and essentially do the entire process twice. Which now that we have the process, I feel like now knowing what we know, we could make this entire thing in about 10, 15 minutes. But we had to fight through to figure out what the limitations were and the good process to do the overall thing. But we do have this working pretty dang well. It's not perfect. I just noticed that these two lines are moving the exact same speed. But if we were to modify it, we're going to lose all of our motion. So I'm not going to worry about that. Although we could update our selection tag really easily. I'm not going to worry about it. But that's working. I don't know. I'm quite pleased. That's working quite well. But let's go ahead and see if we can just pretty this up a little bit, make it something a little bit presentable. Let's see. What are some things we could do? Well, we could subdivide this again to make these a little bit more rounded if we wanted to. Actually, there's a bunch of different things we could do. First of all, it could just be these rounded caps. That's fine. They look nice. We could go and throw this entire thing into a... Actually, this will probably lose our colors. But we could put the entire thing into a cloth surface. Oh, I'm surprised we didn't lose our color. And, oh, we'd have to figure out the normals. Some of our normals are a little weird. So we'd have to align all of our normals forward. But, you know, we could give it some thickness like this. And especially if we were to take this and throw on like some, actually them randomly being forward and backward, if we were to view this from a perfectly frontal perspective, but go into our render settings and change this maybe to physical and then add in some ambient occlusion. I'm not sure what our overall scale is, but that should be pretty good. I'm going to right click and add a compositing tag and say composite background. So that should be a very flat render. We'll just get our little ambient occlusion, giving us a little bit of shadow. So that's what a cloth surface is doing for us. But by rearranging this hierarchy a little bit, we could go ahead and put this directly into a cloth surface. And I put the cloth surface into the subdivision surface. And now it's going to make more of these rounded pill shapes. And if we put a Fong tag back on there, actually, I forgot the cloth surface kills Fong tags, unless we say no, don't. Yeah. Cloth surfaces just freaking kill Fong tags. But what you could do is put this into a connect object and don't weld it. Although that did seem to kill the materials. That is weird that the connect object of all things is what killed the materials. But there, I just changed around the hierarchy, and now you can see that that our Fong tag is back. Actually, it's not, but if we set that to manual and put a Fong tag on there, boom, now it fixed it. So now we get all these nice little pill shapes. And, I mean, our playback is probably going to be slower, but you see this will still be animated. So stylistically, that's a cool way of getting some of these rounded balloon shapes if we wanted. And, I mean, it's going to render flat, but we hit render here, and it should just kind of imply the curvature. Although you can see some of our, oh, I guess those are just further back, so the catching shadow. If our normals were all facing forward, that we wouldn't be getting these little goofy shadows in there. But it might be nice to, especially, well, let's just do it manually. I'm going to go into our orange color. Let's go into our reflectance channel. I'm going to remove our reflectance. Let's add on a Beckman. I'm going to go into the Fresnel, and let's add on a dielectric. So now we get just kind of this nice little highlight here. If we wanted, we could add some roughness on there. I'm going to leave it nice and sharp. It will render quicker that way. And then if we throw in, let's go ahead and save. Let's go ahead and throw in an HDR. The most handy HDR that I have would be Grayscale Gorilla's HDR Studio. Or you can even use Link to use a lighter... what's the word I'm trying to use? I don't want the HDR rig to be overpowering here. So an alternative is you can actually use HDR Link on a material. So we can go ahead and apply that material to a sky. And then inside the material, I'm going to go to the luminance channel. And then I'm going to say I want to control the luminance texture inside of Link. And now we're using Link on a sky here. So I can double click on that. And now we can just choose our HDR. We can go to a Pro Studios Metal if we want to. Chad made this pack. They're really nice. Just find something that's got a really nice highlight of some sort. And that looks good. And then I think we could go and put a compositing tag in here, and I say I don't want to be seen by camera. Yeah, there we go. So now we can get these nice little reflection highlights on here. I thought we would. Do I have to be seen by camera to get the reflections? Oh, yeah. Maybe not seen by rays? No, we need that. Compositing, self-shadowing, composite background. How do I make it not render? Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't say HDRI Studio. HDRI Link is also a plugin from Grayscale Gorilla. But the point being is I was just trying to throw an HDR onto this guy. It's choosing to be kind of difficult. So we could just put a gradient in there if we wanted to. In fact, stylistically, that might even be kind of nice. Where we could, if we're just trying to get like a nice highlight on here, we could just go and put a luminant texture on here, make a gradient, and apply that to a sky. And right now it's only going from one side to the other. Let's go ahead and darken this up. And if we were to spin our sky, I think there's probably going to be an angle. Yeah, there we go. So you can actually see the reflection happening right there in the viewport. Let's go ahead and brighten up our luminance. I'm going to say multiply by 200%. Let's multiply by 300%. I'm sorry, brightness. Brightness is what we need to multiply. 300. There. Now it gets brighter and brighter, and as it gets brighter, you can see our gradient is actually increasing over there. Let's put a 1 on there, and now you see we're going to get quite bright. And then we could even have this, it's quite white over there, but let's go make a black one. Go there, a little softer over there. And now we have the ability to grab our overall sky. And where's our sky? Oh, I turned off my axis. Alt-D. There we go. And now I could tilt this. Oop, make sure I have the sky. Come on. Come on. So we could tilt that entire thing. Oh, how did I do it again? Sky, please. And I could tilt this up. And now you can see, now we get our gradient up on the top. We could pull this more forward, more back. The point here being is I'm just getting this nice little highlight appearing on there. Now, I don't want that to show up in the background, and I felt like my compositing tag was failing me there a little bit. I don't want to have it be seen by the camera. And is it still going to work? Yeah, you see that they turn off unless the camera is turned on. So now they render. Don't want that. So I think what we can do, here's another little hint, is we can make a second sky. And on this sky, I'm actually going to put the compositing tag. I'm going to say I want this one to not be seen by reflection. I really don't want to be seen by anything except for camera. So it's, in essence, we're doing the opposite. So now you can see we're getting the reflection, but I have a new sky taking over. So now I can apply whatever the heck I want on that sky. That's what we're visually seeing, but we're still getting the reflection from the one that we're not. There might be a different way of doing that, but this clearly worked. The ambient occlusion, honestly, is a little bit muddy because of our render settings. So I'm just going to turn it off, and this should render incredibly fast. And even flat, I kind of like that. Like this, just a highlight on top of this flat thing. I would probably rotate the sky a little bit better. Just get a little rim light on there. Yeah, I don't know. We're just messing around at this point. For anybody who's still hanging out, post links again at the bottom for new questions, and we'll see if we can tackle another one pretty quickly. Because I was not planning on spending the entire time on one. But in the meantime, we were just kind of talking about, that's applying a reflection there, but we don't necessarily need reflection. We have a lot of different ways we can combine this rig. Like right now, we've just got this polygonal version where it's like kind of just dots going through. That by itself is pretty cool. Yeah, I like that. And then once again, we could, as an alternative, we could go and grab this and put some sort of, I'm trying to think of a parametric way of doing it. I can't really think of one. But we could explode all these out. I'm trying to think of a way of exploding them out on a per object basis. We could melt them down to n-gons, and that would work. But we could, parametrically, if we wanted to, we could put a bevel in here and tell the bevel to work on polygons. And easy there. Extrusion of 1, limit. Okay. Not sure what's going on. Oh, okay. Apparently, it had something to do with the order of operations of the plane effector and the bevel. But you can see here, something that's cool is we can get these little parametric bevels going, and we're extruding our polygon out. So by grabbing our bevel, we can increase the distance of the bevel, that we can push it inward or outward. And, that's kind of neat looking there too as well. The new polygons are all going to get this orange material applied, but just as a kind of basic thing, like kind of like these little plank look. And you can see I can still drag this. And so based on this, because we've got this such a clean polygon setup here, that we've got so many ways that we can, like we can throw the bevel in, or we can throw the subdivision surface on to round them out. We could throw a cloth on there and extrude them out. We could probably put this would be a weird one. Let's grab a old school explosion deformer, put that after the plane one. Let's give it a speed of 1. It's going to break them all apart. But I'm going to say, actually, your speed is 0, your randomness is 0, but your end scale is still 0, which means as I increase this number, it's actually going to just shrink them down. We've also got this end. I guess there's no end angle, is there? Oh, there's angle speed. There we go. So now this just becomes like a little poly effects type of thing. So every single one is shrinking down a little bit. So now they'll still move up as individual lines, but we have them as individual polygons as well. And that might be kind of cool if we were to throw the bevel on after that. So now look, we've got all these little beveled tiles that are going to be traveling up and down. And once again, all this is just on top of all of the work that we already did. So this almost becomes this raw material that we can play with. We can do a MoGraph, MoExtrude, and we could put that on there as well. And now every single polygon is going to be extruding. Once again, our normals are being a pain. I was trying to think of a way to fix all of our normals, but the problem is you usually say align normals, but all of our separate pieces are separate. So I don't know how we could keep the cuts and fix the normals right now. It's not quickly coming to mind. But yeah, we could do a MoExtrude and extrude all those outward. So many little things we could combine and do some fun things. And even that, okay, now we've exploded these out. Go ahead and turn on our subdivision surface, and now we'll get some perfect circles. But those perfect circles could be cloth extruded. So now we're going to get little almost pill sphere things. But we could put those like that and then run the cloth surface afterward. So by changing the order of operations of all of these things, we can also like extrude out little cylinders here. So we're almost treating these like splines, but we're still just these nice little flat polygons. And even this is getting incredible playback on here, and it's pretty cool looking. And I mean, and here's the thing, here's the tricky thing. Like, I'm very glad we spent the time to try and hammer our way through and make this work, because if you had sent me a render that instead looked like this, and there's like all these little capsules, then we would have been creating a series of clones. We might have ended up with the same similar technique, but we wouldn't have this raw kind of polygon setup here that we'd be able to be getting this entire more elaborate rig that is ready to play and travel and modify in all these different ways. We would have had a series of extruded circle splines, and that would be a lot less interesting than what we just did here. So by forcing our way through that, we were able to come up with a technique that indeed in the end worked. And we even learned a bunch of shortcuts. Like I said, if we did this again from scratch, we could do it in about 15 minutes. And we're just going to have to hammer our way through some of the field stuff, because it does add a lot of really crazy cool complexity to things. So yeah, I'll save that as another version just because it's fun. And let's go ahead and jump back in the chat. Looks like Paul had another question for us. So let's go and open up a new Cinema 4D file. Let's go ahead and click on the link here. And what do we get? Ooh, it's a GIF. From this project. Oh, okay. You have the two different links. Well, first of all, looks like we got some. Hey, Paul's saying preferably without X particles. I'm going to go ahead and say that this is not going to be possible without X particles. Also, there's a lot of different elements to it, but I'm going further without clicking on this and making sure that we can see who made it. So this is Deloitte or Delot from Martin Salfity. Martin Salfity. So it's a whole big project. Now, you did zoom in on specifically this one element of it. He's got it. Wow, look at that. See, that's something. That's more something I'd want to be tackling. But yeah, you pulled from the very first GIF here. But here's a trick: is there's so many different things here. There's the cool depth of field. There's a kind of a little water droplet effect. But then there's also the growing of these little curvy lines as they grow out. Each of those is a completely unique, different element. And each of them would be a completely different way of tackling it. So, I mean, given the context of like, is it possible to do, I mean, almost any of this kind of without X particles? The way that these lines are traveling, let me think. I mean, some of it goes to. I'm not going to spend too long on any one element here, but if we were to just make a cylinder or make a flat plane, and let's hit UM. The shortcut is for path selection. Also, earlier I saw somebody asked a question about, do I have any recommendations on how to start learning shortcuts? And yes, I actually do have a very, very specific recommendation. It's the way I force myself to do shortcuts. And that is like, it could be like, okay, path selection. I need to see what path selection is. I don't know what it is. Let's just say I'm on the loop tool, so UL. So I'm on loop tool. I'm like, I want to use a path selection. How do I use path selection? It's like, well, I know there's a shortcut. So let's see, I can go to selection tool here and then just start looking through it. It's like, and I'm looking. I know it's here somewhere. Path selection, there. So it's like, okay, cool, path selection. I could just click that link. Or I just click it and start path selection. That'd be fine. But if I want to start learning a shortcut, then now I see path selection. Oh, that's a shortcut. But here's the important part. Here's the way you actually learn it. Don't go, oh, I'll remember that next time. No, don't click this and continue and say, next time I'll remember. Like, go and find it. Find path selection. Be like, okay, cool. Hit escape and then hit UM. You are now building the muscle memory. You're like, this shortcut is UM. And then even once you start doing a little bit of that, when I hit but you can see when I hit U, it pops open a menu. And now I have a menu. It's like, oh, U. And I look at all these things like fill selection, loop selection, shrink selection. It's like, oh, if I'm trying to find the shortcut to some sort of selection, it's in the shortcut U. So now I can, at any given point, I can click U and be like, I want fill selection. F. Oh, F. So now I can know UF is the shortcut. So building up that muscle memory is the way to start learning it. Now, one of the tricky bits here of the reference we're seeing is we're not just getting these straight lines, we're getting kind of these cool little curves to it as well. So what you could do is start drawing out some paths here. So I could like draw one like that. But then let's say this is supposed to branch out one and then travel upward, and then maybe that one branches, and then that will travel out two and go up. In fact, let's rewind and let's travel that out two, go up. We'll travel out one, go up. So we could start drawing out this pattern, which by itself is kind of fun. I like doing this kind of thing. Doodle-doot, and go doot, doodle-doot, out, up, out, up, out, one, up. So we could do this kind of thing. And now we hit, I don't think there's a shortcut. So you hit Shift-C, type in the word spline, or actually we type in the word edge, and now we can see edge to spline, and yeah, there's no shortcut, so we can double click edge to spline, and now we've converted that into a spline. So now we really don't leave the plane. That was just a means to an end. So we got that, but the way it's going to draw the spline out is going to be pretty particular. If I were to select this and hit UW, you see this is the line that actually travels back to the beginning, so each of these becomes a branching point of that. Now we could try and, well, first of all, a couple things we do. We grab this and we could say, okay, this is actually a B-spline, and now you can see we're going to get those nice curves in, so we can now see those curves. But it could be a problem in certain places like this where you see it didn't quite connect all the way. So you just have to be careful on the way you're designing that if you're going to do a B-spline. There's other types of splines that might give you similar things, but let's just say this is good enough. We also would need them to all travel upward, and that can actually get pretty tricky. Honestly, I'm not even sure if there is a direct way to do it. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's go ahead and create a tiny end side. I'm going to create a sweep, And let's put both of those inside the sweep. And now if I were to grab this and say change our end growth, it's not, they're not simultaneous. You'll see that as I pull this down, each individual line will rewind itself before the next one. And you'll even see a couple of them are traveling the wrong direction. So that we can't do it via the sweep. So instead, and I don't know if this will work, but I'm going to make a MoGraph, a MoSpline, and let's feed the MoSpline. We're going to change this to be, the object is going to be in spline mode. It is going to return just a line. It is going to go to the spline tab now, and I want this to source this spline. I'm going to hide that original spline, and now you can see our original spline is hidden, and now we're seeing a MoSpline in its place. And now you can see, oh no, okay, so the growth mode is a complete spline, but I can change growth mode from complete spline to separate segments, and now as I rewind, you'll see all of them simultaneously are erasing themselves out. But there's also a problem with this, and there's no easy fix, is the way these are rewinding, it's not like travel down 4 segments of this one and then erase it out. It's travel down 10% of it. So it's going to take this entire rewinding of this line for me to get those fully erased out on everything. So we're going to have remainder lines still there the entire time that these are growing out. So that is a little bit of a sticky point there. So once again, this goes to where a particle system would be doing this more the way you'd probably want it to. As far as some of these going the wrong direction, let's see which ones are going the wrong way. Essentially, that one, and that one are all reversed. So we can go back and select those. Select that, and that, and that. UW, shortcut to select those splines. I can right-click and say reverse sequence, and that will spin those in the opposite direction. So now at least those will erase in the proper direction for us. But you still see the other problems that we're getting with it. I'm kind of curious if we were to go to effector. Yeah, we can go to effectors, but I don't think there's any scale. If I were to put a plane here that's on position, if I go scale, uniform scale, negative scale, yeah, that doesn't do anything. Too bad. So, I mean, there are other potential options. If we were to put this entire thing inside the sweep, then once again, we get our sweep going. It's looking nice. Oh, this is another interesting thing, a quirk with the MoSpline. The MoSpline has a thickness to it. You see there's actually a width, which is cool. But that means that when I'm trying to scale up my end side, nothing's happening because the MoSpline is feeding through rail spline data as well at the same time. So I'd actually have to increase this width to be able to change it, or I have to go into the sweep and say, don't use the rail scale, turn that off, and now I'm using our end side directly. So we could increase that. I kind of like this hexagonal pattern. It looks kind of cool. I'm going to leave it like that. Anyway, something I was going to say is if we were to change the way this is subdividing, so let's say go here and change this to subdivided, and let's say, actually the MoSpline, does that not update? It's following the vertexes. I guess, oh, it did update. I just had to force it to refresh. So you can see all these subdivisions, but I could go into our original spline again and say I want our maximum angle to be 90 degrees. We'll have to force our end side to refresh. But then you can see that we've got very even increments. These curves are a little wonky, but I'm going to ignore that. It's just the nature of how big is your curve versus how big is the shape you're feeding through. If I shrink that down a little bit, then it's going to look a little better. So now you can see we've got individual polygons. So then, a potential way of erasing these out, and I'm not sure this is actually a good idea, but we could go and grab a polyFX. Let's group the sweep, put the polyFX inside, tell the polyFX to be being fed a plane effector. The plane effector is going to say scale down to a uniform scale of -1. That should be shrinking the polygons down to nothing, and now we could feed that a linear field. And let's set that to Z+, and let's have the width be really tiny. So now, I mean, as an alternative, we could be growing the pipe not by a sweep, but via some sort of fall off traveling up the line. And now the growth is going to be a little bit more consistent. In addition to this instead of being a linear field, we could change this linear field to be a spherical field. And we can position it over here. And we can go to our mapping. I guess maybe the size. Yeah, it's the size we actually want. And we go to our remapping. I'm going to say that the inner strength is very strong and invert it. And now we can grab our size here and just increase that radius. Let's hide that fall off because we can see the result. I said hide. Oh yeah, I forgot. When you have it selected, it still shows it up no matter what. That's a pain. I think there's a setting. I thought there's a setting to not display it, but I'm not seeing it. So I'm just going to lock my setting, deselect it because that kind of thing annoys me. And let's go ahead and increase our size and go. And now it's all growing out that way. And of course, you could probably draw or paint a picture where this is traveling up in different ways. There's some fun different stuff you could do, but there's a lot of kind of limitations on just that alone. It can get pretty crazy. The limitations and specificity you might need on certain things. And then, I mean, once again, like I said, every effect here, like that's kind of drawing these lines, but that's unrelated to the fact that there seems to be these particles that are growing out from some of the primary source pipes. I'm trying to think. I mean, to be fair, we could be cloning. Let's go ahead and make a cloner. I want really low poly, so I'm going to make a cube, and on the cube, I'm going to unlock this. On the cube, I'm going to turn on fillet, and let's go ahead and set our fillet subdivision to 1, and then increase this so we got something kind of spherical. I'm going to let it be low poly. T for scale. Scale is way down below particles. Put that into our cloner. Clone onto whatever we want. The object, and the object I'll say is the MoSpline. And right now it's a count. I'm going to say a step, so now every certain number of units. Let's turn off that for a second so we can see how many. I'm going to say every 11. Now you see we got a decent amount. Let's say every 5, which will effectively double the amount. Let's say 2. I don't think it's that many. So yeah, now we're cloning that many. We could even tell this to be a multi-instance, so that should calculate pretty dang quick. Resweep it, and now we can feed through, I guess, well, I mean, we'd need 2 things. First of all, I'd probably feed it in the same plane effector. Does that even make sense? I'm not sure. Yeah, so these are starting to exist at the same time that our pipe does, so that by itself is kind of nice. I'm going to keyframe that so at the time is 0. Let's go to the end. So here, our size will be pretty big. All of them. Cool, so that should cover that. And that's making the spheres also come into existence. But now we can also make a cloner random effector, and this random effector is, you see, spreading them all out, which is ultimately what we want. In fact, let's stylize this a little bit more. I'm just going to have them travel up on Y. I'm going to have them only travel up positive on Y. And interestingly, they're not only on Y. It must be based on the way they're cloning out the spline. Some splines face up, some splines face down. But I can change this to be an absolute mapping, or sorry, transform space based on the effector. So now they will all travel straight upward. I'm going to say they can travel upward quite a bit. So those will all kind of randomly push up. And I'm going to tell this random effector to have the exact same fall off as the other ones. So as this travels through, those are going to shoot up into the air. Although, interestingly, those are getting created and then flying out of the range of the plane effector and thus scaling themselves back down again. A kind of bizarre thing. I think we can. No, actually, no. Yeah, there's already in the order. So that's just kind of that's interesting. Plane effector. Yeah, I guess we just feed in 2 different plane effectors to solve that problem. I mean, I don't dislike what it's doing, but it's pretty weird. Let me see if I can get any kind of cool effect going here. Because on the spherical field here, what I wanted to do, I wonder if we could invert that. I mean, we can invert it, but would that make a difference? Oh, nice. Well, no, but that means they're always... No, actually, that is doing what I wanted. Cool. So it's inverting it. And now what I'm actually going to do is put a delay. And now you see, even though this one is like kind of full strength, by putting on this delay, we're forcing this one to smoothly transition into their final position, which I like quite a bit. So that's neat. And then, we could also have those be scaling down as they go up. We could say scale, uniform scale. I'm going to say absolute scale, -1. So they should randomly scale down also as they're traveling upward. And then, you know, almost all the animation here is being driven by this spherical field. So there's really cool ways of combining those things and putting them on. Paul, yeah, we could have made the spherical field a cylindrical field so they'd be traveling upward. But, you know, like what's cool is how parametric this entire setup is. Like if we were to just change the base spline that we fed into it, we'd be getting completely different effects on the entire thing. And then even, you know, like just layering things is so fun because now we've got this here. But what we could say is let's add another random effector. And this random effector, I'm going to have it not travel on X or Y. And also, let's set this back to the effector mode so it's absolute. So you see now we're getting all this random motion all over the place. But what I'm going to do is tell this to also have a fall off, but this is unrelated now. I'm going to say let's have a fall off of Y minus. So what should happen is as they travel upward, they are passing more into this random effector. And then, oh, nope, looks like I'm backwards. So it's very random at the beginning and getting less random as it goes up. So we actually need this to be Y plus. So now as they travel upward, they can start spreading out more. So let's go back to our random. Let's go ahead and say that these can actually push out 150 in all directions. So now as they travel upward, those can also spread out in these fun different directions. And I'm also going to give it a noise-based one based on the index of the object. Let's give it a nice slow speed. And now those can travel upward. And as they travel upward, they can get some motion in there as well. Hide our field. And now we get those traveling upward, doing their own thing. Let's give ourselves a few more frames here. And those be traveling around, nice and subtle. But they're, you know, when they're close to the pipe, they're nice and slow. So they're just our ability to like layer these things up and get them to behave the way they are is great. In fact, like the way our random effector here, remember I said the random effector, I wanted them to scale down. Really what I want to do is feed it another plane effector. And this plane effector is going to scale them down, uniform, -1. And now they should all scale down to nothing if we feed this in. So they scale down to nothing, but I'll feed that plane effector the same linear field that one's using. So as they travel upward, they're also going to scale down. You'll also notice that this is also incorporating some color where this plane effector is, this linear field rather, is feeding its color. So if we go to our color remap, we could give these some color as they travel upward. If we go back to our cloner and give it a initial color of black, they should come in black, and as they travel upward, they're going to get more of this color applied. So I can pull this down a bit. As they scale up, we'll get a little bit of color, and then they can start wiggling around. So if they travel up smaller, they move more, but they're calling less attention to themselves because they're smaller. So yeah, tons of control right there. So that all looking pretty good. Quite pleased with that. Yeah, Paul. So I mean, you can actually do quite a bit with particles. I mean, these are clones, but I mean, I think even in the SDK, in the code in Cinema 4D, I think it refers to them as particles. So I think it's okay to call them particles. But yeah, so these will all be doing their thing there. And I mean, man, some of this stuff is just so fun. Even there, it's like, okay, cool, that's all happening. But now let's go ahead and throw a MoGraph tracer on there. So now we're going to get, oh, look at that. It looks so cool. So yeah, those are going to travel upward. I think we need to limit our tail a little bit because, well, I guess if you're just doing your initial growth, I wouldn't want these to keep moving around that much if that's the case. So I would go back to the random. And here's where we have to start naming. Let's go make sure that we call this one scale. That's a plain scale. This one is going to be random XZ. And then this one is going to be random Y, because they start getting messy real quick. This one is another scale. So yeah, in our XZ, I'm going to tell it to just be random. So they'll just move into their final position. So they'll travel up and, oh, that's interesting. This should be based on the node, maybe? I guess they all just go, oh, no, okay, sorry. I do want it to be based on noise. I just don't want there to be any animation speed. So now, there we go. Exactly what I wanted. Those look cool. So yeah, so those will sweep up, and they looked way cooler white. So, I mean, I don't know what we would trace these on a final render, but let's just turn on. So now they're colored white. So those will each individually grow their own little tail as the pipe is being drawn outward. Working pretty well. Now, now, having said some of this, we were talking about the no, let me think. I'm trying to think if there'd be any kind of a parametric way to have something be traveling and be kind of snapping to a grid as it goes. We totally could, but then could we trace it? I mean, this is just really fun. Let's go. I should have been naming these A, B, C, D. So let's go ahead and name this. I guess we'll just name it 6, but we'll call it, I don't know, Pipe MoGraph Fun. Okay, so I'm going to open up a new file, actually, and then just a random thought I had that might be fun is if we have this grid and we make a null, actually, I'm going to make a sphere just so we can see it a little bit better visually. Let's go ahead and drop it on there. And of course, we can see our polygons here. Let's say that, let's see, how do we do, what's the best way to do this? I am going to make a null, and I'm going to move it down here, and then I'm going to keyframe it, and then I'm going to fast forward to the end, I'm going to move it. Actually, I'm not going to fast forward to the end. I'm going to fast forward to about here, and I'm going to travel up to there. Keyframe again, travel a little bit of time, travel to there. Keyframe again, travel up to the end there. Should be pretty sloppy keyframes, but that is even sort of part of the goal. So you see this is going to travel upward, it's going to travel over, it's going to travel up. It's already kind of snapping the grid. I mean, it's not snapping, but you can see what it's doing. But my thought here is, what if we were to add a Cinema 4D character tag constraint? And I'm going to say that I want to constrain, I want to spring constrain this to wherever the null is with a length of 0. So it's constantly trying to go to wherever that null is. So you can see it's trying to catch up to it. And now we have our stiffness and our drag. I'm going to add a lot of drag on there. So you can see it's always going to be weird at the beginning. I rewind a few times. You can see it's tracing the null, and you can see it's kind of tracing in this position. But specifically what I want to do is I also want to create a clamp. And this clamp, I'm going to say you are clamped to the plane. And you're not clamped to its origin, you are clamped to its point. Is it point or points? We could say surface. It's plane, point, surface, spline, bounds. I don't think that's actually snapped to points. Oh, maybe it is. Ding, 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 ding. Oh, that's weird. That is bizarre. As, whatever, a constraint on normal. No. Point. Okay, so it is point, because we don't set a specific point. It's just any. So it's seemingly it's snapping to points. But, oh, okay, so what's probably happening is the order of operations. The spring calculates after the snap. So what we do is make a second copy of this. And I'm going to say, here you are springing, and here you are clamping. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, cool. So now you can see what is happening is it is constantly trying to get closer to the object. I'm actually going to have it spring tighter so we can see if this actually is something. Spring, okay, tighter. So you can see it is traveling, but it's always being forced to snap to the nearest point on this grid. So that by itself is kind of cool. Ultimately, actually, I mean, I don't even know if the spring is necessary. I'm actually going to say PSR. No spring, PSR. I want you to always be trying to get to the position of this null. But now you can see it's snapping. Snap, 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 snap. It's never off of that grid. Now, that's not terribly interesting because we already kind of keyframed that in such a way where it was traveling along with it. But if we were to grab this null and instead of keyframing it, let's go ahead and zero everything out. Let's right-click and add a Cinema 4D vibrate tag. Enable the position. Slow this way down. I'm going to have this be able to travel up to 200 on X and Z. And now as our... Okay, that's way too slow. And it's probably not powerful enough, so let's go 555. So now as this travels around, you see that we're going snap, 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 snap. It's snapping directly to the grid. So what that might translate to is the sphere that we're following. If we were to put a tracer on it and let that run, okay, I don't want it. I just want it to be on the origin, not the vertices. But now, with any luck, we hide this plane, and now look what we're getting. We're getting it drawing based on snapping to these points. Now, if it moves quick enough, you can see it actually can snap diagonally, and that's, I think, mostly just a speed thing. So if maybe we slowed this down just a little bit. Maybe. Ding, 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 ding. No, it can still do occasional diagonals. So I'm not even sure if there's a good way around that. There's probably additional ways of quantizing this. But that's kind of fun that we can move this around. And that could be growing some pipes as well as a thing. We can feed multiple different sources in. It's just kind of neat. There's probably a dozen different ways of doing something like that. But I just thought that was a neat thing to explore a little bit. Let's see. I'm going to see if there's anything else visual that we can extract from this question, you guys. I mean, we already got these kind of traveling upward. I mean, I don't really see anything for us to try and tackle right now that isn't rendering based, and I'm not going to get into rendering stuff right now. Oh, wow. Even the way these were drawing these lines out in these bubbles, but if I scroll down, they were growing out little lines as well. We didn't even see that when we were tinkering. So we kind of got some techno plant things going here. Very cool. This is a cool piece, Martin. Back to cinema. Let's see. Let's see. Well, I'm going to try and click on one more question. Here's a question from, well, let's go back and look at the one we made. Just to take one more little gander. Pretty cool. Oh, wait, well, let's look at it from below, because then you kind of get, you don't lose the pipe, but then you get all the cool effect on it as well. Yeah, that's neat. I like it. So yeah, man, the way we can combine these things is crazy these days. Man, fields are powerful. Glenn is saying, I wonder how people will get so good at these loops. So let's see what you got here. First of all, masterclass, infinite 3D loops. Is this a, well, first of all, this is a school of motion thing, which I'm assuming is, yeah, like I'm never going to answer a question which is somebody's trying to make money from something, so I'm not going to replicate school of motion thing here. If you end up finding something similar to that via somebody's work, then we can give them direct credit, but I don't want to be just taking somebody's class and then potentially explaining it, if I could explain it. I've never tried to make one of those loops, but we could potentially explore that at some point in the future. It is pretty cool. Actually, I've already in my head got an idea of how to make it. So if you find a different example, we might be able to attempt to tackle it a little bit. We're going to be wrapping this up soon. Crossfader is kind of famous for doing complicated, tough ones, so I'm a little skeptical of being able to tackle this one, but Crossfader has this link 36 seconds in, he says. Let's see what we got. Oh, this is that thing that just came out. This entire thing I know was made by one person. Somé, I think it's pronounced, but Somé, 2 credits, Somé. Is that the person who made it? Is Somé the person? Or is that a studio that they work for? Somé. No, it looks like that is him. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Somé, because this was really cool. If you guys have not seen it, be sure to click on the link, and I'll have the link in the descriptions as well, where it's like, oh man, I can't believe this is all made by one person. So very, very nice looking. I'm going to kill the audio there. So I think it's a cell phone commercial, but yeah, right where it does that little transformation, man, it's cool. But the specific question here was around 36. I'm not sure what happened at the time. I am worried. Well, let's see what we got here. So it's the entire city bending in a kaleidoscope type way. I don't think Vimeo is. Yeah, Vimeo does not let us frame by frame the way Photoshop does, or YouTube does. So let's as there is not, I think that there was just a lot of work put into this where you can see that while there's some incredible symmetry going on here, these are not identical. Like there's taxi on the bottom, but this taxi is on the top. Here's a van instead of a car. So these are not a mirror. Of each other. So to a degree, I think this could end up being really specific to the camera angle. How did those buildings reveal? That would be very revealing. Nope. Those are hidden. There might be a lot of really clever camera angles where this would not work in a much larger context. Because we only ever see what he wants us to see. So you see, like, okay, so we got all these buildings and everything, but you'll see that when we go out here, like, oh, there's a whole city block here. It's like, well, what did that look like? What did that look like at the time when it was pinched? But we don't see it. And then over here, it's like, well, what does this look like over what's beyond this building? Like, what does that look like? Because like clearly these buildings would be this would be like an empty space. What would it be? But we never quite see it. And actually, it's even a little interesting here because do you see how that shape, this, I'm specifically looking at this wall and this wall. They're both kind of rectangles. And you'll see where it almost looks like they start intersecting. But then if we give it a little bit of time, oh, maybe they still are intersecting. So I think that there is just a lot of clever placement and very specific. You see, we never, like these, okay. Everything, what's a good way of explaining? And I don't even know if I'm right on here. The way that these are combined. Larry is saying you can one frame in Vimeo shift left and right arrow. So we have to hold down shift. Let's try that. Just like I was explaining, if you want to learn shortcuts, you got to do them. So if I hold down shift and tick. Let's see. Acknowledge me. Shift left. Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. Shift and left. Okay, that's actually incredibly helpful, especially for these live streams. So yeah, okay, cool. Look at that. So those are just bending in. Now, the idea here is everything is either connected to one shape or one side or the other. So we're starting out with a flat building. So I'm only going to kind of focus like right here on this building and maybe kind of emulate the road. So let's open this up and let's make the basics. So I think the idea here is let's go ahead and make a plane. We're going to make this editable. I think we want an odd number. So I'm going to undo. Let's just go 21 and 21. Make this editable. I'm going to grab a loop and a loop. Rather, I'm going to grab a loop and a loop. Are those even? I think so. Okay, so those are our roads, let's say. Should we grow that? Yeah, why not? So those are our roads. And what perspective? Do we want to do it from a 45? I think so. Okay, so I'm going to, let's just create a selection here. Actually, you can save yourself a click. If we make a new material here, I'm going to make it just a kind of a road. We can drag that directly in my drawn selection. It'll automatically make a selection tag for us. Cool. Now I'm going to select all, hit K, and then K again to get the knife tool up. And let's cut from there to there. Escape, and now we got a nice cut going through. My knife tool, I don't know if it always lines up, so I'm going to get UO to optimize, just to make sure those are lined up. Cool. So now let's grab one half of this thing. So I'm going to carefully draw along the line. UF, select that half. UP, delete. So two different objects, okay? So we got number one and number two. Now, what's our pivot point? Our pivot point is going to be right. I'm going to hit Shift-C for snap, and let's snap right to there. That's our pivot point. So we're going to make 2 copies of that. Copy, paste. We got 2 of those. So there's 1 and there's 2. 1 and 2. So those are our pivots. And now, let's say, oh, that's not where it's going to pivot from, because I don't think that, well, let's see. if we were to pivot from there, I don't think there's actually a good pivot. If we were to pivot from here, we could get this straight road, but we don't get our other angle. So maybe it would pivot like that. So that would give us a doubled up road, or maybe it has to be in the middle. So yeah, let's fix our pivot. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go right to the middle instead, which is got to be a midpoint. So I'm gonna hit the letter P for snap, and I'm gonna click on edge snap, and then midpoint snap. So I can hit E and then move around, and it should snap right there in the middle. And grab the other one, also snap that right to the middle. I guess I was also just 0, 0, 0 in the scene, which would have been slightly easier. Okay, so now we got that. So now imagine if we were to rotate that like that. So those are going to be our two states. So why don't we go ahead and record it? So I'm going to record this at this time. So that's there. And then here, it'll be 0. So it's just a 90-degree rotation. So imagine if we were to rotate like that. So our scene is starting like this. So what we need to do is fill in some of our missing geometry here. So in this case, we could, I'm not sure. I guess the cleanest way is potentially just grabbing that, deleting, grabbing an edge. Let's see how long this is. It is 19.48. Grab those, letter D, extrude, paste that number, apply, new transform, new transform. There we go. That's going to fill in the gap. And then we can double click our selection. Make sure that we also have this included. Set selection. I'm also going to hit all of it and hit UO just to weld all the extra points together. So now we got that section. And now you can see as I drag that it's going to reveal a second road and the rest of this one. Now, I guess at a glance, we also want to do the exact same thing on this other half of the road as well. So let's hide number 2, go back to 1, delete, edge. This shouldn't take too long, but we got to be clean because we're not going to go too far into this, but the details we do complete, we want to do it pretty well. Otherwise, it's going to lose the effect. So let's also set the selection there. And then optimize UO. Okay, cool. So we got those two shapes. So now we should get pretty clean transition as those two move. You can see that that is actually working all the way through. Now, in the same way that those are now completed, also, I mean, I don't want to do it quite yet, but we're definitely going to be taking this and moving it down a hair, like 0.01. So I guess I should be off polygon mode. Move it down, minus 0.1. So 1 is just slightly below the other one on the ground, so they don't quite intersect. So now when they move, we won't see like intersecting polygons. And then, oh yeah, there's so many like interesting details here, because here, if we were to grab this one, I actually want to go and delete all of these polygons, UF, hold down shift, complete my selection, delete that. And then, I guess actually over here, we'll just grab all these and delete them. I think there's going to be a lot of this kind of thing. I'm going to grab all these and D, transform, and it's already paving the way I want to. Select all, once again, optimize. So now, when these two slide against each other, especially if our framing is better, if we're over here, then we don't get those overlapping. It's just like one road suddenly splits into 2 roads, and then one road here suddenly becomes a right angle instead of it being flat. Now, along those lines, we also want to go and complete these edges. So let's go ahead and do that. In fact, actually, this goes in a 90 degree. So what I think I'd want to do, no, they both got to go. So you grab both of these, and we need to complete them individually as well. I'm glad we set up these keyframes. You see how quick it is to do these changes. So let's go ahead and grab those edges again. And you see I very quickly turned off deselect elements, so I grab the ones underneath it. Let's make sure we grab deselect ones we don't want. Immediately turn that back on, because I know I'll forget and mess things up later. D for extrude. I don't know how far we need to go, so let's go back over to this rotation. Doop, 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 doop. Now those are overlapping. That's fine. I do want to grab just this one. Nope. I want to grab this one. Nope. Let me think. We do need... Oh, that's what I need to get rid of. Oops, stop. I didn't know spacebar started playing now. I didn't know that. When did that happen? I'm going to delete this overlapping of the road, because I want that free. But now those two should be able to do that. And now you see those are kind of seamlessly coming out of nowhere as well. Okay, so with all of that in mind, we could take a look at the way the building is going to pivot. Now, the building, there's a little bit more magic going on there, because I'm curious where our pivot point is, unless our pivot point was actually further over, because there's a lot of kind of morphing of things. Like, I'm looking here, I feel like this road is sliding differently than the sidewalk is, but it's a little difficult to tell. It might just be the car. No, I definitely feel like, yeah. This building is independently sliding. I'm pretty sure, or maybe this whole sidewalk is, because if you look right now, this sidewalk is aligned with the storefront, but as we frame forward, it begins moving way forward. So those are not locked into each other, which does make me think there's more play in the road than there is in the building. And once again, the framing here, I think things would look really messed up if you weren't in a very, very specific spot. But along those lines, it does make me think that we could think of the building as a slightly separate object, like a kind of a independent rig, where if that was, the snapping helped us just jump that right to where we're at, wanted. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Bloop. There we go. Okay. So that is not anything right now. I'm going to make that a child of that one. Yeah, tricky. So what I'm thinking here is, do you do two objects or you just bend it? I'm not sure. If we were to make a bend object, I'm going to make a child of that new plane, rotate it to the orientation I want, and then say fit to parent. Now it's actually fitting to this entire building, but I don't want it to fit the entire building. I want it to be pretty dang skinny, like that. And I'm going to move this over to where our building has to pivot from. So I'm going to say right about there. So now if I were to give this a bend of that, let's say -90 and 90. There we go. So that's what I was looking for. So now we need to keyframe this as well. So the strength is 90 at this time, rewind, and here the strength is 0. So now as this plays, the building is going to be sort of moving and sliding. Now, I mean, there might be a way of pivoting this slightly from a different position. I'm not going to worry about that. To tell you the truth, actually, I don't want to do it this way. I don't want to use a bend. As nice as that was, and it was working really clean, that's not the way I want to do it. I'm going to make this half the height segments. No, I'd like them to line up, but whatever. And now let's go and move this over again. Yeah, I really like when those were lining up, but oh well. Yeah, the final one is going to be right there. So I'm going to... I'm just going to eyeball it. I'm going to turn off... I'm going to hit Shift-C to stop it from snapping, and I'm going to just eyeball that right to that corner. And now I'm going to put... I'm going to actually... Yeah, whatever. I'm going to copy this entire number 1 null into the plane, which is also the building 1. And now this is going to be 2. And now this is going to pivot, turn snapping back on again. Pivot right to that corner. I don't need the ground, but I do need the building. And the building is going to be at 0, 1, 0. And now we're going to move this over, turn off snapping until it's just visually right there. Yep. And there we go. And now, so this is just going to be building 2. So now you can see that is pivoting, but it's the wrong direction. So we can go and grab that already keyframe thing at the end instead of being 0. I guess it'll be 180. 180. Okay, cool. Now the reason for doing it this way instead of using the bend, I was the entire thing's one null over. So let's go ahead and scoot that over. I think it's just that easy. Okay, so now you can see we got a nice flat building. And it's going to transition into a 2-face building. So not bad so far. Let's go ahead and grab this and just make it a little bit cleaner. Real close right there. Okay, so now all we have to do is start choosing what parts of the final building are going to be on what side. So, for instance, let's say that... let's go ahead and I'm going to make them children of the building. That might be dangerous, but let's just do it. We don't need any subdivisions on this one. Face it up on Y. Pull it up here. Let's make it square. Pull it back. So now the roof is going to be over on this part. But what we can do is grab a cube and make that a child of that. Let's go and just call this. Let's revert it. Basics, right click. Reset to default. So this one, Shift C PSR, reset. Scale down, so this becomes kind of a box up here. Like that. But then imagine if we were to copy, so that's the building, and this is what rotates. I'm going to make another null. We're just going to call that, this is going to be building. So that's rotation 1, but then here's building, it's building rotation 1 and 2. So I'm going to make a duplicate of this cube, and I'm going to put in building 1. This one is going to be much smaller, and it's going to be longer, and this is going to be kind of like an air conditioning unit, and that one's going to kind of just sit right there, and that'll go up, and we'll make a duplicate of that. We'll scoot that one over, and then there's so many things we could take. Take this, stretch it out, and then align this right here, and just get kind of like a little section of wall that'll hide some crimes here. But of course, let's copy that into this one. We'll just move that over. Same pivot point. And then potentially even some of this floor goes into section 1. But we don't want it everywhere. Or if we do, we're going to scoot it down a little bit. Just a little bit. Let's grab these 2 units here, move them over. You could, of course, make, like unlimited different shapes here. We could make a cylinder. Put it in 1. Scoot it over. So I don't even know what these things start being, but you got that, and then we copy 1 over to number 2, and this one will be a water tower of some sort. We just have to make sure that none of these will intersect in the end. So now you can see we've got, okay, we've got a whole building here. We could even, let's do a quick facade on it as well. Should be easy enough. So I'm going to take this, make it nice and skinny, pull it down, pull it forward, went way down there. I must have done it in perspective. Pop that out. Same thing in the other group. This one going over there. Potentially, this would get a bend deformer. Certain things might end up being better with a bend. Let's go ahead and let's just make the building white so we can see something. And if we're being fun, why don't we go ahead and turn on the SSAO? It should be good at the scale. Let's go ahead and save as well. Building fold on itself. Okay, so if we were to clean up our perspective there a little bit, we can now see that we've got just got a T road here and 1 building on a corner, and we can go ahead and hit play, and we're going to get another road and a much smaller building. Let's go ahead and rearrange some of these things, make sure they're not intersecting. But honestly, the closer they get, the more it's going to feel like they belonged there. Like this one, let's stretch this out and go really close over there. And you can even get fancy where it's like I could copy this over into the other one, and then let's put this on this. And by fancy, it's not fancy at all, but we can go and have this, it could be some sort of overhang. So it's like overlapping the other one. Like those two will actually overlap each other. This little water tower could be here, but let's go ahead and put a second one in. T for scale, shrink it down on Y. So that becomes this bigger shape. And now by grabbing that one and letting it overlap, it just feels like those two should not overlap each other. But as we scrub back and forth, we're going to see the transition. Now, once again, some of the tricks of the light or the way we move these. If I move this just barely below the other one, especially if we put some sort of detail along the line, I think that you'll not see that transition happen. And to a large degree, I felt like the way we were seeing the other one was it's almost like this this plane almost didn't exist. Like it was just kind of like, because we were at such an angle where it's kind of like lower and you don't really see it. And by the time it rotates up, we're already seeing it, and we could see the air conditioning units just kind of floating on top of the other wall. So it just becomes, what are we choosing to put on one and what are we choosing to put on the other? And we just have to make sure they look compatible on both ends. And then once again, a lot of the magic on that one was being very careful with our camera angle. Even the way this is oriented, I feel like, I'm just going to do it real quick, but if we were to just take a camera, time of 0, I'm going to record our position and rotation. Let's go to the end, and now we can be over here and then be up and seeing the building a little bit more. Or actually, was that sort of the opposite? I think we were seeing more of the road and building at the end. And at the beginning, we were actually quite happy to be further back and see the entire facade, but a little bit lower. So now the entire thing, yeah. So I mean, I feel like we're getting a decent version of the effect, and as long as the camera is zoomed up enough, or as long as we're close enough, then we could have extra buildings and things off the side, and we just make sure that those don't collide. We don't see them until it's time. Along those lines, I mean, we can emulate the effect quite easily, I think. If we let's go ahead and do entire buildings here. So this will be in building 1. So that will put this up taller. T for scale, E for move, put it here. So now we got an entire second building right there. And then we'll make an entire second building here in number 2. And we'll just do essentially the same thing. Make it, no, make it a little skinnier. Bring it down. Do that. We can even grab our overall geometry here, potentially, if we're seeing more of it. I don't want to just stretch it, but I don't want to spend too long on it either. But yeah, go back here, and then like those go. And now, okay, you even see, I was trying to be careful, but even being careful there, those buildings are intersecting each other. So those were a little too close. Those couldn't quite be doing the layout we did there, but we'll shrink that one up, pull it closer to the front. Now those are no longer intersecting. And now we could grab a second building here, T for scale, and maybe not quite so tall. And then this one can go snuggle up here in the final position, and we know for a fact that that will not intersect. Maybe make another one of these. This one could be further down. Little gap there. I'm fine with that. Let's go ahead and rewind, and let's extend our roads. I'm not going to stress out about this too much. Let's go ahead and just make it black. T for scale. Scale it way down. Perfect. Stretch it out. And then this one. Whoa there, killer. Come back. So that can be there. Get out of the way a little bit there, building. This one needs to be a child of 1. And then we need another one, a child of 2. That one can be over there. So yeah, those roads start extending a bit. And now those get revealed. And yeah, the building just goes and folds in on itself. And now that we're in this more final shot, there's a lot of different parts here that we're not seeing based on our overall camera. So let's just whip them out real quick. In fact, let's just do it as quick as possible. Copy and paste. These will just go into group 2. We'll pull these over here. Those can actually be fairly prominent in our view. And then into group 1, we'll just take these and put one right there. Pull it down. Grab this one. Pull it over. Let's grab that one and make another copy of it. Scoot it over. And I mean, I would think that when you're designing this, you would go and you spend a bunch of time laying everything out really carefully, so that you know, you could go and rough in kind of the effect here. You could rough in the effect and then start adding detail. And you don't need too many hero items. Like the road and then this front building are the only ones that are really doing anything kind of magical. Everything else just doesn't intersect each other. So let's see. So yeah, at the beginning, okay, it's this one. This one's a little in our way. I'm gonna ignore it for a second. Let's just see what we get. Okay, so this is pretty important actually. Well, first of all, what I just did made it so if some of these buildings are blatantly intersecting each other, another good reason to pre-visit, which is essentially what we're doing right now. So you see when we're like this, those are intersecting. So they're fine like this, but this, remember, we got to remember this block doesn't exist. So where is that one going to come from? Well, I think we take this building, and even though I feel like that is a correct group, well, I mean, instinctually that's still the right group, but if we go and swap it into the other one, now it's actually intersecting with this building. But if we were to move it in such a way, we don't actually see it yet. And then it'll kind of appear out of nowhere. And this comes into where our camera angles are important. So let's go over here again. This building is obviously way too in our way. We can go look at the reference, but I don't want to get too specific on the reference. Real tall building, but let's go ahead and scoot that down. I'm just going to go ahead and scoot it over. I guess we can't do that if we're going to be having this one intersect. Okay, we got to take a quick glance here because, okay, yeah, you see this is a fairly empty section because in the final area, that would be too much in our way. So and we can't have this one intersecting. So this one, I almost feel like has to magically appear at a certain point because it can't exist on either infrastructure. So it can't exist on one, because it'll be intersecting on one side, and it can't exist on the other because it'll be intersecting on the other. But what it could do is our camera, let's see, what are we doing? Let's say right around now, it could exist. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and just animate its enabled state. So now it does exist, but prior to that frame, it doesn't exist. And we just need to make sure at this frame, our camera is in such a position, let's see, that one's pulling back, so that's fine, but we just need this one to be, like, this would be a little bit more focused in on the block and the storefront. So the camera is in such a position at the beginning. That wasn't quite the beginning. The camera's in such a way at the beginning that we don't see, let's see if we got it. No, this is appearing way too late. Well, we're zooming out too quickly for it to appear. I'm also, at the same time, I'm also sort of thinking that you might be able to fake it with position. So here, it's there, but then over here, when it's appearing, which is right there, I'll have the frame it appears. If we were to take this and scoot it away, I wonder to what degree we can trick the perspective. So it's like, okay, that's all happening, it's unfolding, everything's kind of revealed, but you see how that building just, if you like, look, that building just kind of appears, but it doesn't feel wrong. It just is kind of there, even though we're just moving it into position. And as the camera reveals more, it's like, oh, everything's in its final position. But the only, the magical ones are kind of like this road and this building, but most of the other ones, they're just already there, they're already in their final position, and we don't need to worry about them too much. Now, I mean, this is as far as I'm going to take this one. Obviously, you go further and further and further, and there's so much beautiful detail in that one. But I feel like this is the essence of building a lot of those. There's, like I said, there's probably a lot more like maybe bend deformers where certain parts of those are bending into their new 90-degree position. So you get that nice curvature of the sidewalk, and certain parts of this could be bending around this curve. But the idea of this null being here, and certain things could just be stuck on certain rooftops, like it's on one side or it's on the other side. And even here, the other, look how magical it is here where this is pivoting from one spot. So this wall is completely sliding around in relationship to this road, but it doesn't feel like it. You'll see that, like, look how wide it is right there, and it gets skinny again. But you're not looking at that. But I think that's the equivalent of what we were seeing here when this bit of sidewalk was aligning with the building, and it kind of just warps up to the front. Because of the way things are moving, your eye is just carrying that motion straight through. And yeah, by scooting those two sections of roof in, I feel like those are blending in pretty well. And even that, like, I feel like there's even like a clear gap we could put. Like, if we don't quite see through there, like we could put this rooftop could match all the way up to that point, and then we can make a separate rooftop that's connected on this face. And that could be connecting from there to there to there to there to there, and then just put another object right there. So that there's never that line that crosses each other. They're always blocking their path all the time. So there's a lot of cleverness in the placement of these objects as well. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here, and I feel like I'd even want to see a little bit more of this rooftop. But I mean, I'm not going to try and match the camera angle exactly, but it's a really cool, crazy piece, and I really love the way that everything just kind of magically goes. I'm impressed at like this building that we're just kind of like, hey, just scoot into your final position. But with how much perspective is changing and moving, like that just kind of works. And we didn't. I don't know if in the piece it does, but if we are keyframing our not our depth of field, our FOV, our field of view, right, and our focal length rather, then there'd be more change of perspective, and then these kind of things like where this is sliding in would be even more acceptable. And then even here at this point, like as we're getting into these final few locked in frames when everything's bending into its final position, we are now free to build out the rest of the city in its finalized position. We never have to worry about the rest of the city when it's all folded out like this because it just doesn't exist that way. We'll never see it. So these parts are the only bits that we needed to fake. The rest of it could be real straightforward. But it's also really cool. It's kind of it's not quite, but I feel like it lives in the world of like an optical illusion. So yeah, okay. I am quite pleased with that. Thank you, Crossfader, for sneaking in that final question. I knew it would be a tricky one, but I think we were able to tackle the mechanical parts of it without having to get super bogged down in the nitty gritty. So, okay, well, that's a 3-hour live stream, which should be more than enough for anybody. I mean, come on. So let's go ahead and wrap this one up. Another big thanks to everybody who is supporting me on Patreon. A huge thanks to everybody who is coming and hanging out here live in the stream. It's super important. We couldn't do the show without the questions, without people in here to help me talk through the different answers and be like, I'm stuck. How do I do this thing in X particles? And then 3 people will be like, oh, you do it this way. So couldn't do it without you guys. So that should wrap this one up. Stay tuned tomorrow, everybody who is supporting on Patreon at the engineer tier or the technician tier or above for tomorrow's first official episode of the bonus stream, where we might be talking about the chain project as a kind of a warm-up episode and then start the proper projects after that. But that should wrap this one up. Once again, thank you, everybody, and see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Got to push the button down here.